Welcome, everybody, to the What Up Yours show for Friday, November the 7th. This is Garnet Lee. Glad to be here. Glad you downloaded the show. Thank you. And this is sort of like the, I don't know, that was a weird static pop, was it?
No, it wasn't. It was me. It was my lip popping off the beer.
Smack.
That's what happens when you go to the UK for a month. All right.
Sucking
for 2
too
weeks.
hard.
God, it seemed like a month. You've gone for 2 weeks. It seemed like a month.
I know. Well, I missed the show before as well.
Missed you, sweetie.
Me too.
Aww. Anyway, that's John Davison. He's back. And Shane is here with us.
Yes.
He's going to be gone next week. So this is like a special week because we're kind of making David Ellis now the official extra chair, third chair.
Whether you like it or not.
The hate is flowing as we speak.
They're like, oh no, fail. Oh.
Not Mr. No Fun.
The big fun proposition passed, despite some strong
51 to 48.
51 to 48.
Whether you like it or not.
Passes.
That's what Gavin Newsom said about it.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Here he is.
All right, so
Good
what
to
are we
be
doing
here.
today? So here's what we're doing today. Because there's so many games coming out and people are really into talking about them, I thought we'd just go ahead and indulge that. So what you've been playing is what you've been playing plus. I like that courtesy of Big Fun. You named it.
Yeah.
So what's that all about? Well, plus is I went around a bunch of the boards and picked up a bunch of community input on 3 games that are the games we're talking about: Gears 2, Resistance 2, and Fallout 3. On a couple of those games, I actually broke one of my rules, but hey, you know what? It's my goddamn show anyway, right? So I can break my rule. And then my rule was that you always do the one-up forum, so we broke the rule, and I went to the Gear Heads of War site, which was David that recommended it to me. That's Cliffy's brother's Gears blog, so we got some stuff from there on Gears 2. Also went to myresistance.net for some first impressions from Resistance 2 players. And yes, I did make a stop at Gaff. This show will be featuring commentary from Rick O'Reck, and that makes it extra awesome.
This might.
And Shane's like rolling his eyes. The apocalypse is now.
Hopefully he likes Resistance too, so you have a counterpoint.
Embrace the apocalypse. It's here. It's now. Anyway, that's first and second segment. Third segment, we got the news. There you go. Let's dive in. Who's been playing games?
Well, John's been on a lot of planes, and planes, trains, automobiles.
But when I wasn't on planes, so last time I was on, I said I was going to play Wii Music.
You were you were hopeful and optimistic about having like a family bonding experience.
And a mere 5 seconds before we started it, you said, "What about Wii Music?"
Miyamoto has jumped the shark.
I think he changed the description there a hair, but it's
official. He's gone beyond appealing to the casual and has just dipped into the inane.
But you have the target market.
I have the target market. I wrote about this in the new EGM as well, and I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. They lasted 15 minutes.
That's good value right there.
15 minutes, my 5-year-old asked me if he could play Madden now because he was bored.
Nice.
And my 3-year-old wasn't interested in anything other than the drums, and he didn't really understand it. I mean, it's inane. It's boring. I mean, what the fuck were you guys thinking giving it an A?
What do you mean, what the fuck were you guys? Did any of us review that?
I missed that one.
One Up gave it an A or an A minus or something.
So former editorial director of One Up, who was all about personalities and said people should speak their voices, now you're making us an institutional voice?
Well, I think you guys made yourselves an institutional voice. It has nothing to do with me.
How did we make ourselves in it? Well, that's a long story we won't even go into. But I'm not taking any credit for that review.
I will say that was among the highest reviews.
It was way higher than everybody else.
If you look on the meta...
Next highest score is 80, and that was kind.
If you look at the meta, it runs the gamut from 2 to 9.
Well, I just withheld 3 lines that went through my head and the back of my head.
It's fucking garbage. They should be ashamed of it.
But, okay, isn't it kind of fun for a little bit?
It's not kind of fun for anybody.
Kind of?
So, based purely on reputation, and to some extent, you got that review. I sat down... Before I showed it to the kids, I sat down with my wife and said, this would probably be the kind of game you like. It's sort of like not really gamey. It's just sort of like, interactive toy.
Okay, how quickly did you feel like an idiot?
So 2 minutes after we started playing it, she looked at me and said, "Are you calling me an idiot?"
Wouldn't be the first time.
She's like, "Is this what you think of me?"
Exactly. It's like, what are you saying about me that you think this is boring? So, a non-gamer found it boring. A 5-year-old found it boring. I found it boring. A 3-year-old found it boring.
It's got some real toe-tapping tunes in it.
Is it because the music selection is public domain, or is it because there's
MIDI files?
Because there's no winning or losing. Really.
Well, there's no winning or losing, but I think the other problem is it's inside out in the way that you play it, because you're not Like every other music game, you press a button and it makes a note. In this, when you press a button, it's like you're opening a hole in a wall behind which the song is playing. And if you happen to open the hole at the wrong time, you don't hear it right.
What?
It's like the song is playing whether you do anything or not.
Right, you're just kind of making it
and
better.
you are opening up the opportunity to hear it. You're not playing the notes necessarily.
Right.
And that's why a 3-year-old can't understand it, because to him he thought 2 drumsticks, drum kit. Bang, 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 bang. Okay, why didn't it do it that time? Or you weren't doing it on the beat? Well, I mean, like, how do you explain that to somebody? Because you have to play along with it correctly.
You don't get the wrong notes. You only get the right notes when you're doing them at the right time.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
or you get the right extra notes if you activate them correctly. So, like, the only song that the kids really knew, I mean, was the Twinkle Twinkle. And you can play that, and if you do it, and if you know Twinkle Twinkle, and you tap it out in time with the music, you get the tune. And then if you start introducing, like, 8ths and 16ths, then you get the flourishes. But if you just do it randomly, you just get this, like, cacophonous garbage noise coming out.
What we heard at E3 when they played the Mario theme,
yeah.
And it sounded like garbage. Yeah.
But then the conducting doesn't work like conducting, because conducting is standing in front of the orchestra and providing the time for them.
It's just like tempo. I played that.
It's tempo,
it was
yeah.
just like, oh, if you continue at the right tempo, it happens, and it's not fun, really.
But you are instructing the musicians specifically in that, so it kind of breaks its own gameplay in the conducting, because you think, okay, it's conducting, so you're doing something, and you just sort of like, you should be doing the gestures, and they should play along with
waving along.
But you're not. You are waving almost specific notes. So there's Vivaldi's Four Seasons. So by the time it gets to the violin solo in the middle, you have to like shake the controller really hard to make him do it, and it's just it's uncomfortable, and it's boring, and it sounds like shit, and it's like, at what point did they all sit around and go, yeah, people are going to have a great time with this?
Well, and
so you gave it a B+.
Obviously, yeah.
Well, we haven't seen the U.S. sales yet, but we have seen the Japanese sales, and after 2 weeks, it's like 120K, which is pretty good, but nothing compared to what we fit, we sports, we play. So it's kind of being seen as a misstep.
And for me, like, the game's called Wii Music. It's using MIDI files. The music, even when it's playing, doesn't sound good. That makes no sense to me.
And there's no excuse from the Wii for that, because the Wii can do good sound.
Yeah.
Certain instruments sound good. Like the piano sounds good, but the guitars sound like ass.
Right.
The drums are okay.
I can only imagine what the violin sounds like.
The handbells are okay.
Oh,
well,
it is the Christmas season.
But I will say, and it isn't as if we gamers aren't buying real music games, because I saw on Totillo's blog, he had a big post about how the Rock Band on Wii has actually become one of the best songs.
Dude, Totillo was kicking it this week. I've got all kinds of stuff from Newsroom, but like, it's interesting that you said your son wanted to play Madden, because Totillo's dug through all of the I guess I only just got a Wii and it's set up, of course, and I don't know what.
Garnet, who just bought his Wii, so excited to experience.
I've had it for 2 weeks.
Welcome to 2006, Garnet.
So what do I do with it now?
You watch it collect dust.
Mine has been collecting dust since Boombox.
No, you know what you should do? You should play Super Mario Galaxy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's excellent.
Well, I bought Boomblocks to go with it. Anyway, so evidently there's some sort of deal where you can leaf through the calendar and like see what people have been playing, and it's like a collective off the Nintendo channel.
Code and they send them
if you've
code.
shared, I mean, it tracks everything you do, and it always tracks how long you've played
I was under the impression it tracks for everybody's usage patterns, because he pulled together.
If you've friended people.
Yeah.
No. Like, evidently on the Nintendo channel, you can pull down stats for the number of hours people have been playing games.
Oh, no. Well, the Nintendo channel, but that's in
that.
aggregate. It's not specific people.
Right. Okay, so he pulled together the aggregate stats, and he's been doing this thing, I guess, monthly, where he like tracks the aggregate stats, and he noted that despite the fact that it hasn't been publicized, that Madden for Wii showed a significant increase in the amount of time people have been playing it over Madden the year before. So it seems like maybe their family play Wii Madden thing is starting to catch on. Sports starting to catch on.
That might be just my son.
Really?
Because he plays all. He would play.
So it totally works for him.
Madden, he would play it all day, every day if
John,
we let him.
As a Brit, if your son grew up to become an American football player, would you be proud?
He keeps telling me when he's older he's going to be the quarterback for the Oakland Raiders, which I don't completely understand.
He needs to set his sights higher than that.
Or like, are you trying to push him? Like, look at Beckham. This is what you should try to do.
No, really. I mean, like, so when we were away, he really got into soccer. So we're playing that more, and I just got FIFA All Play, which we're going to play this weekend.
Nice.
He also is apparently Star Wars, I think there's something genetic in boys with Star Wars because
it's the mitochondrian.
I think it's the lightsabers. I think lightsabers are innately awesome.
It is. I think it is something. So, Star Wars was introduced to him at school. Some kid had been talking about it, and they were play acting lightsaber fights with sticks or something. So he had no.
Has he seen the films yet?
No, he has no.
Are you going to show him Phantom Menace first? Have you thought about this?
Oh. I have thought about this.
This is a key.
And
it's key.
We're going New Hope first.
Nice. I think that's the right choice.
Because I think also New Hope. New Hope is also probably the most kid-friendly of all of them. Because Dre was like, "Well, are there any scary bits?" And I'm like, "No,
not really." Obi-Wan just disappears.
Yeah,
I would argue Jar Jar is very kid-friendly.
But the rest of the movie's
Michael Jackson vein.
But New Hope is
New Hope is you're talking about the fourth one, right?
Yeah.
I don't know the part. Let's be real. It's the original Star Wars. They threw that New Hope bullshit on it after the fact.
The part where like Luke is out like going out to go see Obi-Wan and the sand people person comes up over
when the
and goes,
Tusken Raider does that.
Yeah, it's scary.
So what Star Wars game?
Wasn't sand people?
So anyway,
Lego Star Wars?
Yeah, exactly. So friends at school had been talking about Star Wars, and he was asking about it. So. We had, over the course of 2 weeks, we were going to be on planes for 20 hours. I'm like, I'll take Lego Star Wars and we'll try it.
So you had to have the parent-to-son Star Wars conversation.
We had the Star Wars conversation, and I tell you, there is a trigger in boys with Star Wars where it went from, like, 0 to 100 instantly. And over the course, they were making lightsabers and lasers out of absolutely anything and everything. We went out on Halloween, and they had those glow sticks.
Oh, yeah.
And they were lightsabers. They were, like, beating the crap out of each other with these little...
I think it's awesome that he loves Star Wars having not seen it yet.
He's not seen it.
He hasn't even seen it yet.
So his friends, I think, have been watching the Clone Wars show on Cartoon Network, and that was what triggered it. But he'd memorized, so he knew there was Luke Skywalker, and he kept telling me, and my 3-year-old keeps telling me about Dark Vader.
I used to call him Dark Vader too when I was a kid.
But to them, there's this whole, and like I started saying, well, there's some movies, and oh my God, really? but Lego Star Wars, when you watch a kid not just getting into the game but also getting into the subject. You start to see what genius the Lego games are, and like I think we're going to do, because he's also interested in superheroes. So Lego Batman is in our future, definitely, as an introduction to Batman.
At this point, don't you want the Lego games to evolve? I do. I've only played 2 of them, and I'm bored already. Like Lego Batman, I was bored in 10 minutes. You were there. I was like, yeah, this is the same game. What a formula.
I wasn't a fan of Lego Indie, but having spent more time with Lego Star Wars on DS than I otherwise would have because of this trip. That game is very, very good. The complete saga.
They did a good job putting it on the DS.
And the vehicle. I know we're talking about something that came out 6 months ago, but it warrants that as one of the best games of the last year. And I think it's going to be overlooked.
Wait! One of the best games of the last year. I mean, I'm sure it's fun, but
no, as a complete package for the intended audience that it is, I think, and particularly for DS games,
sure.
It is. It's like consistent from beginning to end.
Yeah,
I mean, it doesn't drop.
A lot of licensed DS properties are very throwaway. People don't spend much effort on them.
Yeah, I mean, Lego Indie I thought was boring, but this, I mean, we talked about it. I mean, it came out last year, right? But still very good. Fallout.
No, we're going to go to Fallout now.
Oh, actually, should we go to MotorStorm first? Because I thought you were picky, Mr. Picky.
I always think
the graphics aren't that impressive this time. Are you fucking kidding me?
All right, I always think everybody besides me hates MotorStorm, and this isn't for no reason because everybody hates MotorStorm. And like
fuck you, dude. I don't hate MotorStorm either.
I don't hate it. I'm ambivalent.
I assumed I was going to be the high score, and then when I saw you gave it an A,
I loved it.
I love it too. I've been playing it, and I don't know if you heard the podcast, but the custom soundtracks are amazing. And what's even more amazing is when you're playing your custom soundtrack, everybody else in your game hears your soundtrack.
You broadcast them?
I don't even know how that works.
Internet streaming?
It's magical.
Internet radio?
It's magical.
It's magical.
Awesome.
No,
I had a blast playing it single player, but then when I came here and I played you and Nick, I had to leave for something else, but I could have played that all night.
And you were good. And like as aggressive as the AI is, the CPU AI.
Suddenly I started hearing him say that to like the tune of "I could have danced all night." I could have played.
So somebody here said that they were going to consistently beat me every time.
Who, me?
Yeah.
I beat you a few times. You beat me a few times, and then
You mean Shane? Fuck,
So,
I crashed. Bet Nelson.
that
How
IG
did this actually work out, John?
There was an IGN kid who was really good too. He beat us.
There
a few
was,
times.
yeah.
But
It was a lot of fun.
I find MotorStorm to be, very random, and depending on what happens, like the courses are so big, there's so many different paths. Depending on what kind of craft you have, anything can happen.
Random good random, or random
good. Like
frustrating
anything,
fuck out of
anything can happen. And
But the kids table guys were saying that Pure was better, and
I don't think so.
so.
In my review, in fact, my one-up review, I very specifically spell out Pure is really, really good, but Pure is just, a glossed-over version of ATV Off-Road Fury,
Yeah.
which is a good game.
Exactly.
I agree.
It's just a.
But MotorStorm, its track design is genius. No other racing game has that kind of track design with that much depth.
Hey, I mean, look, this is simple. Like, milk and cookies taste really good until you've had beer.
Right. And but no, Pure's still really good. Whereas something like Baja, when I played Baja,
Which one? By the way, which one?
The real game called Baja, not Baja 1000.
The Activision one or the THQ one?
the next-gen PS3 360 game Baja by...
That's THQ. It's Rainbow Studios, right? Or Rainbow Studio guys.
Whatever, if they're still around. I don't even know, but that game just bored me instantly. Whereas, at least Pure is good. But MotorStorm 2 is my favorite racing game of the year, and that's even with Wipeout HD, which I love.
Okay,
More
let me
than
pull this back a
Burnout was
second.
January, don't forget.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. It was.
Pure
That's a tough
is really fun. Now, I'm not.
You gotta have them both. They're different.
You got to have them both, yeah.
Pure is really fun.
Pure is really fun, but
for what Pure does, Pure is. Really good
I think
at it.
they're in a different league.
They are. I agree.
Having played 3 ATV Off-Road Furies, I played Pure and I was like, okay, this is a prettier version of that with a few new things, but it's really nothing new. Whereas MotorStorm is something new.
I think that it's definitely
Wait.
up there.
Are
with
you telling me
Burnout.
that MotorStorm 2 is something new versus MotorStorm?
MotorStorm 2 is a improved in every way version of MotorStorm
It's what
1.
MotorStorm should have been
And
all along.
That from watching Shane play it, I mean, look, the backlog is bad. MotorStorm 2 is unfortunately in the pile of games I have not gotten to. I like it. I want to play it.
I played through 70% of it on the review, okay? And then I got the retail copy. I started over. I'm about like a third of the way through it again. But, I play it in short spurts now. I'll play 2 or 3 races. I'll play a little online.
That's the way to play it.
Put
And
it
that was-
away.
yeah.
And it's very good for jump in, jump out. Whereas these other games, like the Fallouts and the Gears,
So when
these are big games you need to dedicate your time to.
When I first played it, I didn't like all of the different zones. Like, I particularly didn't like the volcano stuff. But once you learn how to drive, because the volcano is
it's hard.
The conceit through the whole thing is that you are racing on, things with big tires on a hot surface,
Like magma.
so
Magma.
and the different surfaces are actually at different heats, so it affects a lot of things, including your boost, and your car will overheat just by being near
I remember
lava.
that. And they had like water spots that you go through.
Right. So if you go through the water, it cools it down. So that then your strategy is a mix of what am I doing that's most appropriate for my vehicle, and what is most appropriate if I want to be consistently boosting to get ahead. So the strategy is that there's multiple paths in the strategy that you have to take. But when you nail a perfect line in that game, because the physics are really exaggerated. Mm-hmm. And there was this one race where me and Nick had taken completely different routes around this track. There's like this crater, and he was on an ATV, and he was taking the high path, and I was chugging along in this racing truck, and I could see him.
Oh, it's great
And
when
it
you
was-
see a pack coming around like the right or the left, and you're like in the middle or up above.
And just like in the first MotorStorm, there was this one point where I sort of went down this thing, and he went right over the top of me, and then so we were neck and neck, but like on totally different paths.
So
And-
all other games considered, I should go upstairs when we're finished with this, click on Amazon, and order the damn thing and just get it.
It's definitely in the top 3 or 4 PS3 releases of this year.
And they recently said there's a lot of DLC coming, and that excites me because there's already 12 courses, all these different vehicles, and if they keep adding more stuff, it's going to get even better.
Yeah, I mean it was a huge improvement over the first one.
Yeah, love it.
What's the advancement path like? Is it because one of the problems for me of the first game was that like trudging through the I felt like I was
You're still going through the ticket system,
Okay.
but there's more
it's so
tiers
much
to
more
it
open.
now.
It's
Yeah,
much more open-ended. As I said, in MotorStorm 1, at any given point, you were probably reduced to 2 or 3 different events, and sometimes there was one you had to finish.
Well,
one you had
also,
to go finish.
it would force you to be able to play in every position. Basically,
Right.
you had to. There were races where if you were going to unlock the next event, one of them was a bikes only or an ATVs only. This never does
in
that.
this one, there's a cumulative experience bar, and it shows you like at this point you go to the next level, and at any given point you can go to all 4 zones, and there's usually 2, 3, or 4 courses available. So if you never want to do a speed race, you never have to do one ever.
And if you don't like the bikes because they're too fat, because they're too like light and you can seriously play through the game without riding the bike.
Is it Project Gotham that sort of moved it that way, where you could like bounce around to different venues and race different races?
A little bit, but I think it's less.
PGR4.
I like this so much more than PGR in every way.
It's
hard to even compare that.
System.
But
I was like just talking about the advancement system. Where they evolved to where you could just bounce to different locations and race different races to move forward.
Yeah, and it's very burnout-y. It's burnout with dirt. You know,
it's Burt.
It's very arcade. Very arcade.
Burt.
Yeah,
but
I think it's great.
Very, very good PS3 game.
Wow, we have a lot of MotorStorm 2 love.
Yeah. So I played that, and then before I went away, I got a copy of Fallout. And did spend a lot of time while I was away thinking about
you
Fallout.
You famously were like the Oblivion whore.
Yeah.
Famously.
So this is I mean this is something that I think is a genuine issue this holiday, and that is there are so many games now this year that are so big.
How big are they?
But is Fallout really that big?
I mean, like just in terms of like the sheer scale of the experience.
Yeah.
That I could probably play just Fallout well into next year.
Really? Because some people say they've like finished the main quest in like 9 hours. What are you doing? You screwing around?
No. I mean, I've only played like 6, 7, 8 hours, but I've not even scratched the surface. I mean,
the main quest is more linear if you choose to follow it, and shorter than Oblivion. But the periphery stuff is still.
You really didn't buy into that very well. I was trying to bait you and get you to like say something. You're like, yeah.
I mean, if people want to try and play through something and just follow the main I mean, with a game like Fallout, to do that is like playing through to the end of World of Warcraft and then saying you're done with it. You know, it's like...
Well, exactly. So one of the very, very first comments we had on the boards about Fallout 3 was from 10 Letters. He says, man, I can't believe all you people who just did the main quest first. There's nothing wrong with it, but I don't see how you can pass up helping, hindering, or hurting all those other blokes.
Yeah.
You jump into the same thing? I mean, what did you start doing when you got into the game?
So once you get out of the vault, which is just, I mean, it's a lot like Oblivion. I mean, right down to the stepping out of the vault, which is like stepping out of the dungeon, and then the world opens up in front of you, and it's the same kind of like, oh my god, look at this thing moment. And I went to that first town, and I'd heard Scooter and a few other people, and Philip had been talking about different ways of approaching that first town. But you very quickly get an attachment to it. So I was fully intent on doing the evil path.
Oh, really?
Because it was sort of against my natural instinct. I'm like, I'm going to go against my natural instinct with this game, and I'm going to play very aggressively evil. And like in the vault, I was able to do that. I killed the girl's father. I did everything mean that I could think of.
You felt no remorse.
And I felt no remorse. I'm like, okay, this is it. I'm going down the evil path. I'm only going to jack up because you talk to a lot of people that had started playing it, and I'm like, you can't try and be Superman and everything. You've got to specialize. So you've either got to do, voice skills and hand weapons, or you've got to do melee combat. You got to pick two and like just jag them up. But I got to that first city, and that first thing that everyone talks about, which is the bomb in the middle of the town.
Right.
But you get this. If you because you can play it both ways. You can defuse the bomb and everyone loves you, and then you can set it off. But by the time you've diffused it, so you can play both.
Wait, you can defuse the bomb, and then, everybody love you, and then go, screw you guys.
Because there's the mob guy the mob guys that sort of turn up throughout the game. The first thing they ask you to do is, we want you to wipe this town off the face of the earth, and they give you a device to set the bomb off.
Ah, cool. But
then the sheriff of the town says, defuse the bomb for us. And you can actually do both. You can do the good path first and then flip and keep yourself in that kind of shades of grey. But that town has so much stuff in it. There's like multiple quest triggers. I don't know if you remember in Oblivion, the side quests are all guild focused. So you'd be in the Thieves Guild and you'd go through a dozen things, or you were in the Assassin's Guild, which was probably the best one.
Yeah.
In this, you go to a store or something, and the person in the store will just say, hey, do you want to help me do a couple of things? And it starts branching off from there, and you start discovering the world by doing that. If you wipe out the town, those multiple quest trees just disappear completely.
But are those quests ultimately that productive and interesting?
Yeah, because there's things that... So one of them is you're helping this woman write a book about surviving in the wasteland. And every time so she sends you on these, I mean, this is where the Fallout humor comes in. She'll send you on this, like, dumb shit stuff you have to go. So it's like, go and, like, irradiate yourself, like, to the point where you're nearly dead. So you have to go and find, like, so the bomb is sat in this huge puddle, basically.
Yeah, just jump in there.
So you jump in there and drink the water that this nuclear bomb has been sat in, and you start...
Sweet.
And you start mutating. And you go back to her, and she has this cure for it, and she cures you, and then she's like, yeah, this is... Oops.
Didn't quite get it all.
I didn't quite get it all. But the side effect is that if you've helped her on this mission, that what the mutation that you triggered means that in combat, one of the stages of being hurt is you get crippled. And you can't move as fast or whatever. But if you've been through this mutate yourself thing, the mutagen in your system means that you essentially uncripple yourself. So if you don't do these things, there's stuff that happens to your character that you...
But there's no way to see it all. Like, I was talking to Scooter, and if you do blow up Megaton, he told me about it later on what you get to go do because of that, and that sounded really cool.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, you kind of get like...
but it's all,
you can't have it both
But
ways.
it's all about attachments to the decisions that you make. So one of the things that they do is they give you an apartment at this place. So you then have a home base that no matter where you are in the game, you can always teleport back to your home base and go to sleep.
But I'm saying...
Let's wait 1 second before we get on that side, because this became a big topic on the boards, was do you like the fact that you can absolutely rule out entire areas and groups of quests, kill quest givers, kill people who are important to other quests? This is something that people have been really divided on. Like there are completionists who, for them, being able to kill, for instance, there's one scenario where you kill this sniper, and the sniper is related to a whole series of side quests. And if you get him killed, you'll never get those side quests.
Well, it's like this town. If you wipe it out, yeah.
So, in perspective, especially taking away from it, especially while you were thinking about all that, do you like that? Do you like?
Yeah, because what they've done is, I mean, we talked about this like a couple of months ago after we talked to Molyneux, the whole notion of consequence in games. This is true consequence. If you set the bomb off, every mission and every benefit from that town still existing is gone. So you play it through one way and you do that, but I mean, it's like 3 hours into the game, you can trigger that major event in the game. So when you go back and start again, there's not much that you have to do to get to a point where you can see what happens with the other consequences.
Well, you can also have like unlimited save points, so you can also save before you do something like that.
And you can
so
see okay, well, what's going to happen. But the good thing, the many of the benefits from an action, you're not going to see until way later. Like, there's things that once you meet other characters will reference things that happened before, or they'll talk about how you should do something in this place, or you should have done something in this place, but it's not there anymore, so what the hell are you going to do?
I'm surprised people would complain about that aspect of the game, because to me, it appears that is the whole reason people play this game, and like most old RPGs didn't offer that kind of expanded, customizable experiences, and it offers you reasons to replay, because you can play pure evil, then pure good, or
and it means
nuanced versions of each.
Even if you're playing Shades of Grey, you can't... in one run through, you can't see everything the game has to offer.
And there are also specific quests you only get if you're playing Shades of Grey.
Yeah,
they even have specific stuff for
that.
I
appreciate that, and I realize where Lois is coming from. But to play the advocate for that side, there are a ton of great games coming out. I have an amount of time that I want to spend on Fallout 3.
But if you could do all the good quests, all the bad quests, all the medium quests, I feel like the overall narrative would suffer because of it, because it would dilute the whole thing.
And I feel that devil's advocate position is just silly, because like think back to old RPGs. Think of like
this isn't devil. This time I'm not playing devil's advocate. I'm advocating the side that those people are taking. They're saying that they don't like
those people. Remember, like 20 years ago when you'd play an RPG and someone would ask you a question like, "Do you want to come with me? Yes or no?" And you'd pick no, and they would ask you the question again.
Yeah, nothing happened.
You couldn't say no. So now there's a whole game full of infinite possibilities, and people are pissed off about it. Shut the fuck up.
And I think, and what it speaks to is that Fallout is not a game to race through, much like Oblivion wasn't. Because if you try, and it's like this is the same thing that's come up since Metal Gear Solid, where it was like, well, you play through the whole thing and it only took me 6 hours. And it's like, well, that's because you weren't experiencing it, you were just blasting through it.
Right.
And the whole, with Metal Gear, it was absorbing the narrative. In Fallout, it's wandering off the path, because if you stick to the path, then you're only getting a fraction of the experience. I mean, like, you get really distracted by things. Like, you know, you go to there's this, like, real playboy guy that you run into who's, like holed up in this thing way out in the wasteland somewhere, and he's got these two hookers with him, basically. And one of them whispers to you that she wants to get out of there. So you have to work out this way of getting this girl out of this. And, like, this thing is so utterly, like, irrelevant to the overall story, but then you've got this like half-naked girl following you through the wasteland while you're battling off like fire-breathing ants and these super mutant guys that are coming out. And it's like, what it does is it starts to introduce a little bit of eco-type gameplay and a little bit of where it's just like, just for an hour you've got someone who's completely dependent on you and is like, you know, not only is really dependent, but is also giving you a hard time for, like, you know, being a dick and running off without her. And, you know, it's like, I mean, it's really well realized. And even though I'm only...
To me, that's one of my favorite parts of the game is the people you run across that can actually be companions to you and travel along with you.
So that's part where it actually goes back and touches to the Fallout 1 and Fallout 2 vibe, which was having these great characters. And the fact that you're in this post-apocalyptic world really gives them the ability to make these incredibly crazy, wacky characters, whether they be mutants or people who've just become completely mentally touched from the experience of going through the apocalypse or whatever it might be. And so you're saying that it really captured that part.
And I think the way that the design in it this time, I mean, it goes back to some of the stuff that was more in the artwork that accompanied Fallout 2 specifically that you would see. So there's the first like giant boss, I guess.
There's a certain je ne sais quoi to it.
Yeah, but there's a giant super mutant that you
outside of Galaxy Radio.
Yeah, when you first meet the Brotherhood and you follow them to Galaxy Radio.
Loved that sequence.
There's this giant fucking mutant. Like he's like.
Is that the one in Philadelphia or
no? It's all in DC.
It's right outside this building in DC.
I think I've seen
and it comes in and it storms through and it breaks up the old environment. And it looks like it's wearing all this armor, but by the time you knock it down and shoot it, what you realize is that the armor is a bunch of shopping carts that it's strapped to itself.
Yeah,
and it's just grabbed. It's obviously that the character is built out of just junk from the environment. And then you get a closer look at the armor that some of the guys are wearing, and it's like it's old tires and bits of vending machines, and like everything in the game looks like it was built out of other bits that were in the game. It's not. There's nothing sort of like...
Which really builds into the whole...
It really builds into that. This is a bunch of people in a fucked up world that are making things out of stuff that's there. And there's people that are clearly wearing bits of animals.
And then, of course, once you can kind of create your own weapons, that just even adds to it.
Okay, so let me bring it back for you to... You wanted to talk about the apartment that you got. And I sidetracked you because I wanted to make sure we didn't get away from the point that we were making about... excuse me. Tell me about this apartment.
Yeah, so you're in that first town megaton or whatever, and if you choose to save them, the first thing that the sheriff does, he gives you the keys to the penthouse of this little community,
which you can do in your own styles.
Yeah, and but what it gives you is early on in the game, it gives you a home base and a central hub to go back to, so that you know, even if you're in the middle of a mission and you've had the crap kicked out, because it takes a while to get to a point where you're carrying enough stuff with you that you can maintain your health and your armor, and like early on you're getting eroded down a lot.
Yeah,
you're not carrying a lot of stim packs.
And you're not carrying a lot of stim packs, and what you're doing is you're scratching through, you know, bits of, you know, rat meat and bottles of cola, and like getting 1% of your health back at a time, and you're like, and you play you play the combat very differently early on because you're sort of poking out, taking a few shots, and coming back. And it's not until later on you get much more badass that the combat changes completely as you get better.
I'm curious your take of the combat, because I mean the few complaints that I've heard about this game, some people don't like the combat, specifically the first person shooting.
So yeah, early on they'd been positioning the game is that if you don't want to play it like a first-person shooter, you can play it as this term, and you can't.
No, exactly. That was was my... We've been conditioned that if you're going to play it in a first-person game, you have a shooter, you have a gun in your hand, you have a sight on the screen, you assume for a game to feel a certain way.
Yeah.
And if you try to approach it from a first-person shooting perspective, you're going to be incredibly disappointed.
But the other thing is you can't work through the game only using VATs.
Right.
It's impossible.
It's like a resource, and
so you have the action point. So there was one fight where it all fell into place for me. Like you've been working. The dungeons are either large stores, like one of the first dungeons you find is like this giant supermarket.
Yeah.
And then there's also in downtown DC, there's the metro system, which is essentially a dungeon system. And you work through, and the only things that you have are what you can scavenge along the way. So you're taking
a lot of hunting rifles.
Yeah, a lot of hunting rifles. And there was this one point where my health was way down. I'd exhausted everything that I'd found, and there was this one gang member who was just like way more badass than I expected. And it was in the actual station. So there was a bridge across the top, and he was either picking me off from the bridge, or he was coming down and finding me. And eventually I kind of worked out what his patrol route was, and he was coming down this escalator, and I was like, I must have you do that kind of gradual save thing where you get to that point where you're saving it just before the trigger when the fight starts.
Right.
And trying different things. So I was like doing the VATS thing. I'm like, well, if I get close enough, I've got a couple of shells left in the shotgun. Maybe I can get a headshot with VATS.
Did you have the combat shotgun at that point?
No, it was just the normal sawn-off. But I tried everything, and I had a laser and a shotgun and a couple of other things. I was trying different combinations of weapons. I was trying throwing grenades at him, and he would always get me because my health wasn't enough. And I kept trying everything, and then what I ended up doing, and it worked, was instead of facing him head on, I waited for him come down the escalator and go around one side because he'd heard me, because they hear you.
Yes.
And I just went up and ran up the escalator and ran out of the level. And it's like, so the way the game is constructed is it presents you with these situations where you think my only option here is to fight, where the actual way out of it
just run away.
Is I'm just going to run. Because at no point does it require you to kill anything. You don't have to do it.
So you could play this as a pacifism.
In fact, there's only these sort of scripted, like the giant super mutant thing, where
right.
I mean, you can sit back and the Brotherhood will take it down, and you don't have to kill it. I mean, and then you can just go grab the loot and go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
But very often, what the game really wants you to do is to actually hold back and not do what you would instinctively think. And Oblivion did it a bit, and Fallout does it a lot more.
Well, okay, I think we got away from the combat question really quickly because that has been a huge point. And one of the things that I think, David, you said that they had pitched it as a game you could play as a shooter, and that therein lies a lot of the reason people go into it thinking they can play it as a shooter and then being disappointed. Is that right? Was that what
No, I mean, I absolutely agree. I mean, like you said earlier, you shouldn't play it as a shooter.
I never got that they were pitching it as a shooter. I mean, was I just not paying attention?
What they were pitching it was that you could play it VATS only.
Which isn't true.
Because
there's so much recharge time.
I mean, you very quickly get to a point where the way it scales the bad guy is that they are always probably one level better than you are.
Okay.
So you're always at a point where...
Wait, do they still scale it the way they did in Oblivion? Because I don't think they do.
It seems like it,
yeah.
but I don't know, because I mean, there's the ghouls, which
right.
You can just take out with one shot, and if you've got a laser gun or whatever, they just puff into dust. But it feels like they're scaling similarly to Oblivion, where they're always a little bit better than you are. So it's rare for you to be in a sort of more contrived combat scenario where you're like, I'm just going to cruise through this.
Right, and depending on what weapons you have, I mean, when you start out, you can level up your AP, which is your VATS kind of bar,
right,
where you can take more shots.
Action points.
Yeah, but you start out with only being able to take like 3 or 4 shots with your gun, and then it's completely out. You also get medicine that you can then inject yourself.
But as long as you maneuver and tactically take cover, you can let your action points recover and play VATS.
Well, by maneuver, you mean just sit there and they'll sit there and let you wait for it to recharge.
But they'll like, particularly the super mutants, which are the big yellow muscly guys.
They'll start charging you too sometimes.
They'll charge you, but they'll also heal themselves. So if you're saying I only want to do this fight as VATS, I don't have the patience for the first person shooter. You'll both go away and to look after yourselves, and you'll end up like in this deadlock with them.
Just have a standoff.
It's a standoff, and it'll keep going until you run out of ammo.
All right.
And so I think that was misleading, because there have been a bunch of games that are over the years that have said, well, you can play it turn-based or you can play it as an action game. And Fallout did that, and I think you're
dessert topping and a floor wax.
You're best served, actually, by wearing them down on VATS and then switching to a powerful weapon, and finishing them off with, like, there's a machine gun that you get early on that's pretty powerful.
Well, that's what I said back in the preview, and I thought that was kind of cool because it took both the best of both worlds into account. It let you be tactical at the beginning and be thoughtful and do something right, and then just mop them up with your guns.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's that tactical. I mean, you're deciding what body part based on a percentage what to shoot. That to me, that's more of a numbers game than tactics.
But it is kind of apologizing for a shooting engine that isn't quite polished enough.
Well, it's not a shooting engine; it's an RPG engine, and it's from Oblivion.
All right, let me give you a couple of comments here. Pixel Swan said that Oblivion never held his attention. I don't know why, but my first hour with Fallout 3 really is. There's something about the world, even though I've gotten as far as Megaton, that's a lot more appealing than the generic fantasy of Oblivion. I think the fact that combat actually feels like it's doing something helps.
I agree 100%.
Likes that part.
I was actually very, because I'd been purposefully not playing it in the previews, and I didn't play it at PAX. And the thing that shocked me most was it's Oblivion with guns.
Yes.
I mean, it's not
drastically different.
It's not even trying to be that different. It's like,
and even the guns, there's not a. I mean, obviously they're different mechanics, but there's not a huge difference between throwing a fireball at your hand and shooting a bullet, or a laser beam.
8-bit Jeff would agree with you. He said from the 6 hours or so I played so far, it's very much the same exploration type as Oblivion is. The houses are built like in Oblivion a little bit too much. There was a point where I felt like I was actually just playing Oblivion, walk underneath a staircase and open boxes, go upstairs, 2 rooms and drawers, desks, cabinets to look through. From what I've seen, though, it's seamless roaming around the wastelands. When you get to a place like Megaton, then you enter and it loads in like a new environment, just like in Oblivion when you entered the castles and dungeons.
So I haven't got to the point that some people have talked about yet, and I'm looking forward to it. But I mean, like, my favorite part of Oblivion was the Assassin's Guild. And because the way that you would go after people was very, there was you have to assassinate the guy by dropping the thing on the wall on his head. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
And there was these really elaborate.
Like I played that much Oblivion.
And there was another one where you had to assassinate.
I just assume everyone played it because I did.
You had to assassinate a ship's captain, then jump out the window and swim.
Yeah,
away.
there was every assassination had very specific things, and it's like, and it wasn't you have to do it like this. It was always you have to kill this guy, but you're not allowed to do it like this.
Well, and this definitely has. I've heard stories like there's a part where someone asks you to break up this couple. And
that was the one I heard. And I'm like really looking forward to those games, those parts.
There's even another part where you can dress up like a clown suit and stab people in a killing spree.
Wow.
So
and there's things where you can make landmines and leave them in people's beds, and there's a lot of stuff that you can do to fuck with people.
The best is to pickpocket someone and plant a grenade in their pocket and then walk away, and then they'll blow up. You get an achievement for that, by the way.
Oh wow, nice.
Fiendish Dude is with you on this because you talked early on about how bad you could be in the game, and he actually really picked up on that. He says, quick anecdote, I was amazed at how evil you can be in this game. Mass Effect has nothing on Fallout. There was a boy. Okay, spoiler alert. Give me 2 minutes. There'll be 2 minutes of spoilers.
All right.
There was a boy whose town was destroyed by ants near DC, and I ended up helping him kill all the giant ants surrounding the area. After I did,
it's a really boring mission.
Yeah.
After I did, he asked me to find him a place to live. I found him a home a few hours later. I found him a home in Paradise Falls as a slave, and then I told him that Paradise Falls was a great orphanage for children, and that he had to wear a collar to get in. And the real purpose of the collar was to explode if he tried to run away from his new home. Did it feel bad? Did it make me feel bad? Yeah. But it did get me 300 caps. That's totally disturbing, but awesome.
Fallout has a Rutger Hauer movie reference in it. I didn't realize that. Do you remember that movie, the Rutger Hauer one, where they had to wear
kids wore the
where they wore the collars, and if they went outside the zone, it would explode?
Wow. Other references, Holden McClure, a couple of people talk about VATS. He said, I can honestly say this game was only made tolerable because of the sum of its parts. VATS involved little thinking and had little depth other than aim for the head. The shooting was worse than mediocre, and the ending. By the way,
if that's what he's doing, he's playing it wrong.
The ending came up a lot, actually. I didn't put a lot in here because it got very spoilerific, but the ending comes up with a lot of people of it being not very good and sort of disappointing. Anyways, he cites the ending being mediocre, and then all of its minor variations that was appallingly terrible. The animations had that wonderfully shitty Oblivion quality.
Yeah, the animations do look a lot like Oblivion.
They're really bad.
They do.
I was thinking about one of the things I think that would have made the combat more tolerable from like a shooter perspective is if the people you're shooting or damaging, like, I don't know, if there was more of a reaction from them, that they were actually taking damage, other than the generic, I just got hit, then I'm leaning down for a second before I stand back up and shoot you.
In fact, the only time you really get that is the scripted fights, and it's more the people on your side. Like when you're fighting with the Brotherhood.
And then they pass out.
Yeah.
Because they've taken too much damage.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm going to faint. Oh.
But Holden McClure did agree with you. He said that the dialogue options, the varying choices, the overall atmosphere, and the expansiveness made it up for him. And then
about the ending, what I found with Oblivion...
Have you finished it yet?
No.
Oh, okay,
what I found with Oblivion is you get to a point where you're putting it off. where like with I must have held off about 20 minutes from the end of the main story for at least 2 months.
Now, Oblivion you can play on after the ending, correct?
Yeah. But it's not as it stops being very rewarding. I mean, you can go back, you can finish up some of the guild stuff.
You can finish all the guild stuff, yeah.
Because Crazy Screenwriter and a number of people noted that they were disappointed that when you finish the final boss of Fallout 3, the game's over.
Right, it's like Mass Effect. It's like if you haven't done it, then
you can't go back in and jump into that. And,
so it's like Mass Effect, when you get to that final, when you get to the computer,
there was a point of no return in that game.
Yeah, I mean, you trigger the computer thing, and if by that point you haven't been and explored a bunch of planets, then you're not going to.
Yep, that's it. Yeah,
because most modern RPGs will warn you, like, hey, do you want to go in the final dungeon? You probably, they'll tell you, you can't go back from here,
And I haven't got there, so I don't know if it does do that or not. I would assume it does.
But I can imagine, I mean, it's because the vibe is so close to Oblivion, there's going to be a point where you're like, I just want to screw around in this world, and it feels like I'm near the end, so...
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to go find Daddy or whatever the hell it is that you end up doing.
But I will say, regardless of our opinion, they were announced this week it's already sold 4.7 million copies. So it's a huge success.
They announced that they shipped that many, but it's going to sell fantastically. And the game is really solid. Some people are encountering some bugs, but...
I saw David. I was playing it and a robot fell out of the sky.
It needs a good, thorough patch. It's got some animation glitch. It's got some bugs.
The PS3 version desperately needs a patch.
Yeah.
But I think what's very telling is that as much as you even love MotorStorm, one of the things you said right off the bat was you would be happy just to be playing Fallout 3 this fall season.
Yeah.
And so is that the wrap up for you?
For me, seriously, on my own time, non-work related gaming, I will play Fallout and I'll play MotorStorm. And those are the two games that I'll probably be playing the most of through to next year.
All right, we're going to take a little quick break. When we come back on the other side, we're going to talk about Resistance 2. And we're going to talk about...
Can we talk a little bit about Little Big Planet?
I have some stuff to say
about Little Big Planet.
And I was about to note that the game that you didn't mention was Little Big Planet, but you're going to have to wait till the other side of the break.
I've got some bones to pick.
All right, so there you go. Stick around. Give us about 30 seconds. We'll be right back. All right, we're back, and as promised, John, the game you left off of your list, what the hell? Little Big Planet no longer on your list.
I was going to say it's the game that I've been playing the most.
We talked about this a little bit in the break, and I think what it is what it says about me versus what it says about Little Big Planet, and that is, I had this idea that I was going to want to make a lot of stuff with Little Big Planet. And
have you started?
I've started making a bunch of stuff,
and you're not for me. I've made 2 levels now, and while making those levels, in my mind, I have the perfect ideal of what this is going to be, and until I reach that, until I get as close as I can, I'm like obsessed with working on my level. Every morning, I'm like, I gotta work on my level. You're not?
Well, I'm not a patient guy.
And it requires patience, especially for complicated things.
And because I thought that I would be really into creating and giving to the community, and it's dawned on me that actually I'm not so much a giver as much as I am a taker. But
you could be. Wow.
There's room
that
for
was
givers.
Very loving eyes you gave Dave there.
I think there's plenty of room for givers and receivers.
I know there's a lot of room for givers and takers.
It's an open tent world.
But
now you know how he got his nickname, Big Fun.
This party is a very wide party, and there's room for everybody in it.
But what I thought because I thought that I would predominantly want to be creating stuff. Now, when I pick up the game, that's what I associate with it. And why I tend to not put it in is because my natural reaction to that is, that's too much work for what I want to do right now.
What about the play in the share spheres?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is I'm kind of discounting that because
what about them? I mean, why are you discounting them?
I don't know, because in my head, because my personal perception of my relationship with Little Big Planet was I wanted to be making a lot of levels and doing what you're doing and getting into it. And what I'm finding is that my instinct response is, I just don't have the time for that right now. I want to do something else.
I will agree with you that it isn't the dabbler's game that I thought it might be. Because you can't just, I'm going to play 20 minutes of Little Big Planet. That's it.
No, that's it. And because that's when I'm at home. That's
wait, you fully can.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you mean you can't take 20 minutes just to make a level?
Well,
you can't dabble in the create side. You can dabble in the play.
Right, absolutely.
But that's not really the best way. The best way to approach Little Big Planet is to play through the story mode first.
Okay,
which is excellent.
And has some amazing levels. By the way, the difference between the stuff that the inclusion of the stuff that wasn't in the beta, the actual pre-made levels, they're fantastic.
And the artistry as you play through is really impressive. So that's step one, and then step two, I believe, is attempting to make your own level in like an aborted attempt that isn't going to be that great. Your first level is not going to be that great. And then you start exploring what's out there. All the user created levels that are great. Like we're putting up today our 10 favorite levels so far, and
which can be a regular thing we're going to do.
Regular thing. But for me, the other great thing is while you're playing this game, invariably I get requests from a lot of my friends because a lot of my friends are playing it. Hey, let's play together. Let's go play some levels. And you can't create together yet, so you can just play other people's levels. And that's really fun. That's because just going and trying the random hundreds and thousands of levels out there, a lot of them aren't that great. But if you're playing with friends and chatting and having fun, it's a party, and everything's more fun in co-op no matter what it is.
Yeah.
But what's not happening right now, and this does concern me on a longer term level, is that I think there are a lot of people having that same sentiment that John has, is that the share side and the play side are not hooking as well.
What's your proof of this? What are you basing this hypothesis on?
Because everybody's emphasis, because LBP is not in our limelight anymore, and it's not getting the amount of conversation and buzz on the internet that it was. I mean,
think you're completely wrong. Okay. Like, what are you talking? Like, I went to Best Buy and it was sold out this week. It's one of the top threads on major message boards. It's never left the front page. 200-page thread.
Really, because I think that all the emphasis around the Office right now has been Gears. It's been Resistance.
I think that has more to do with our Office.
Banjo has been getting buzz.
Hey, Garnet, here's a newsflash. People want to really like Xbox Live. I mean, it hasn't changed, and
Resistance isn't an Xbox Live game,
and people around One Up don't really like Resistance very much either. So
it's not on Xbox Live,
but that has nothing to do with
like the mediocre single player campaign.
Trust me, I've been playing Little Big Planet all week, and most of my friends who aren't in this office are playing it.
So now you're going to draw a battle line over where they
This office is not a microcosm of the entire game industry. And
neither is the message board that you're referencing.
Yeah, but sure, Gears is a bigger release. But if you're saying because here in our office no one's talking about Little Big Planet, obviously Fallout is more important.
And
I don't know.
Look. On the boards that I read, which include GAF, Quarter to 3, One Up, the thread there are Little Big Planet threads, and there are people talking about some.
Are you reading?
But they're not talking about them. They're not talking about that game to the extent that they were a couple of weeks ago. Come on.
I think you're creating bullshit.
So I'm
creating bullshit. Why are you calling me out like that?
You're like pulling this opinion out of the ether that
I'm not pulling it out of the ether. I'm saying based off the amount of traffic that I'm seeing in those threads and the amount of people who are interested and excited about it, it seemes like it's waned some, and I'm a little surprised. And John has the same voice.
I was away when it came out, and based on like non-hardcore gamers that I'd spoken to just before it came out, it was already appearing that the division between givers and takers was going to be pretty broad, and there were going to be a few givers serving a lot of takers.
Right?
Is that how it's playing out?
It's hard to tell. It's hard to parse the community because there's so much there. And I played a level today that had 5,000 hearts. 5,000 people had hearted this level, and that's a lot of people to play one person's level to heart it.
That's a ton.
So
that's a big deal. I think that like you hit on the thing for me is that it's hard to parse the community right now. Is like there is a lot of material, but I think that's like what we're doing with like putting a top 10. I wish there were more. I wish there was way more outlets.
Also,
than
bear in
just us
mind,
doing
this
that.
game has been out for like a week and a half, and you're already like writing it off. You're writing off like the revolution that is this social experience.
I will.
And as I said, in the last week, I walk into Best Buy and there's a giant hole where Little Big Planet would be.
I will cop to the fact that is definitely a bad thing that I'm doing there.
Short-sighted,
but that's a lot of what happens this time of year. I mean, games have a very. There is a short window to connect.
The game isn't even.
So contrast this.
We're not even out in like some countries yet.
We're not going to talk. We're not going to talk about it this week. And I have a copy in my bag to take home and play. But the Bond game is getting universally between panned and slammed.
You mean Quantum of Solace, the game that E3 you said was better than Call of Duty?
Yeah, the game
Call of Duty World at War?
The game that I said at E3 was better than I thought had the opportunity to be better than
comparing Quantum of Solace to Little Big Planet.
No, I'm saying...
Well, let him finish and you'll find out.
I'm saying that the window of opportunity for that game to catch is very short, and the way it looks right now is it's going to be in bargain bins before December 25th.
Well, okay, that's a bizarre comparison to compare a movie tie-in game to this game, which inherently should have long legs because it's a unique game. and it gets better over time. It gets more robust over time.
Yeah, but it's very difficult for a game to become that long-term
Look at
game.
it just in the context of, a lot of PS3 owners are only PS3 owners.
Right. Are they? Because that's a whole other source of debate.
There's a lot of people that only have a PS3. And there's not a lot of... Resistance isn't necessarily the be-all and end-all that everyone thought it was going to be.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
It's definitely more of the same,
MotorStorm is very good.
But again, it's, polished more of the same.
Yeah. What else exclusive is there right now that the PS3 community is really jumping on? It's Little Big Planet. It's the high profile. I think it's less the how important this is this in the grand scheme of things. I think what's most important about Little Big Planet is how the community that is playing it falls.
Yes.
Because it's two groups. And if one of them dominates the other, then it is going to grind to a halt because it is a community-based game.
Let me try and make my point again because my point is not negative. First of all, I am hugely in love with Little Big Planet. I think the fucking game is amazing.
Why aren't you playing it?
Well, I've not been playing it because I've been trying to play a lot of other games. Because I played a good amount of it, and because I'm trying to play a lot of other games that we can talk about here on the show that people want to hear about, because they've heard me talk about Little Big Planet a lot. What I'm voicing right now is anecdotally watching from the outside some concerns that I have because I want it to achieve I want it to be the great game that I think it can be, and I want the Johns of the world to be. I want you still to be playing. And if you're not into creating, I don't want you to say, "Oh, if I don't create, that's not okay." I want you to say, "You know what? I should share more."
Well, I have some observations. That do go along with your point. The game came out in Japan this week, and in Japan it sold about 50,000 copies, and with some more for the bundles. But so far, if you go online, the Japanese levels, such as the Gradius theme level, which is called Libidius, it's made by a Japanese guy, and every Japanese level I've played is either hard as balls or just really out there and crazy and wacky like this Gradius level. And I was asking on my Facebook why are these Japanese levels so hard? And Christian Nudd, who was on the show last week, he's like, it's because in Japan people who are into online games are the really, really hardcore people. So the first people to go snatch this up are these math whiz hardcore guys who want to see how hard can I make this level, how detailed can it be. So right now, the Japanese givers are these uber nerds who are making insane shit.
Yeah.
And it's not casual people making the levels there yet at all.
Right.
But, it could trickle down that way.
Mm-hmm.
But in America and in Europe so far, it's a wide berth. If you go online and search for Silent Hill, I did that yesterday. There are 30 different Silent Hill levels. And they run the gamut from simple and lame to complex and cool. And,
there's a lot of levels, right?
I'd say over 300,000 at least.
Okay, so even if there is a disproportionate balance between givers and takers.
Right.
The givers are giving enough. And
you guys make it sound like the barrier to creation is daunting and scary, and it really, really isn't. It's a very,
I agree with you about that.
It's a very elegant, easy to use system. If you want to get into complex shit like that calculator level, if you look in the edit to see how many wires and machines are being used to make this fucking calculator, it's absurd. And I'm never going to make that. But I've been impressed by the growth that I've been able to show in my level design.
I don't think it's daunting because it's complex necessarily. I think it is a lot more time-consuming than you think it's going to be.
It's a total time sink. Sorry,
but
it takes hours and hours.
At the same time, I want to get back to that point. I want people like John to be able to say, you know what? I just want to hop in and play 2 or 3 cool levels tonight.
Well, John, I'd love to go online and play 2 or 3 cool levels through the night.
Okay.
And
I think, and back to my point of me saying it's what it says about me versus the game is that this idea I have in my head of a Little Big Planet is that I should be creating.
I will say, John, I think that it will get its hooks in you, and you'll be surprised when it does.
Because I do,
you too, and all of us.
I do really like it, and when I was playing it, and I was in the beta, and I was really into it. But I think now, when it's sort of more just on my own time, it's that I'm going to have to sink a lot of time into this to do what I think I need to be doing with this game, and I know I'm kind of wrong.
Try coming at it from a different direction. Try coming at it from this direction. Let's try and just see how many wild, creative, crazy levels you can just go and check out in 30 minutes.
And there's a thing about it, too, where, because it's a real community that is evolving in real time, on Election Day, when Obama won, people were making Obama 1 levels. And that's kind of cool.
That's fucking awesome.
There's a zeitgeist. Things are happening
It's like
here.
YouTube. There's an immediate reaction to the world around you. What I would ask is, there's all this hype about Spore when it came out, and that it was going to be this amazing thing. And I have to say, the coverage has dropped off precipitously since release.
Well, Spore fizzled even more quickly.
Right.
But it sold quite well.
It sold very well. What I would ask is it possible the same thing will happen with Little Big Planet? And if not, why?
I don't think so. And I think that the reason Spore fizzled is that people had very high expectations for the actual mechanic of the game underneath. And as has been under close scrutiny, each of the individual game elements that could have been broken into a game by themselves, which I was air quoting, is relatively slimlined, streamlined, or to some people's opinions, dumbed down. And so there's nothing to really sink your teeth in until you get to really the universe, the planetary phase. And that's where a lot of people seem to be investing their time playing the game. And then there's a whole other group of people that are still really enjoying, all the different creators and the Sporepedia element of it, right? Little Big Planet, again, like what Shane was talking about, is super accessible, but also super detailed. If you want to build a calculator level, you can build a calculator level. But like you said, like the latest version of Cooter's Holler, how much better is it than...
The new level is called... it isn't called Cooter's Holler.
What is it? Well, you want to let me know what it's called?
My new level is called... Fuck, what is my new level called?
I can't remember.
It'll be in the story that goes up today.
So it'll be in the story.
But I think...
But that's it. There's this grade.
To your point of Spore, as someone who hasn't played Spore, when the Spore creature creator came out, I could look online, okay, that's a creature, it looks funny, that's fine. But like the rest of Spore, if someone showed me a YouTube clip of some other part of Spore, like I probably wouldn't even know what's happening. Whereas like Little Big Planet, it's a guy running from right to left, you can tell what's happening. It's easy to see and think, I want to play that. Whereas like if you showed me 10 seconds of Spore space, I'm like, is that cool to me? I don't even know.
So you think it's the simplistic nature of the base mechanics of Little Big Planet that'll give it longer legs?
Yeah, like the touchstone, everyone knows Mario, everyone knows running and jumping. So like you have a basis for understanding, whereas I think Spore doesn't quite have that. It's really out there. It's really like
agree with that.
Abstract.
We as the enthusiast press, and I think John, this is part of what you're touching on, got really, really hung up on the creating a game level and the creating game level actually being a game mechanic that you're playing. But the playing levels that are created in the game is really fun, and there's absolutely no reason anybody who's listening hasn't.
In that way,
you can just pick up the game and go play all these great... It is really cool to just go play levels.
I think the YouTube analogy continues to be apt in the bulk of the people that use YouTube just watch stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
And that there's comparatively very few people actually uploading things. And I think long term it's going to be the sharing levels and telling people about levels.
And I think another thing that ties into it is how much of the content on YouTube is repurposed from elsewhere, and they just upload footage from somewhere else to YouTube. And you can do that in Little Big Planet. You can take really cool shit off someone else's level and place it in your own level.
Well, what's going to emerge in Little Big Planet that's important that emerged from YouTube over time was the people that aren't creators but become the filters that people go to. It's like you guys are doing our 10 favorites.
Right.
That's a really important aspect of because Little Big Planet doesn't the game itself doesn't do a good enough job of that.
And I think Media Molecule should be doing a better job.
I think there's too few people. Sony needs to really do it. And like the problem is the best stuff isn't bubbling up. Like if you go to cool levels, there's so many things and like it's hard. Yeah, it's hard. So there needs to be a way to parse what's good. But my Little Big Planet rant is about DLC. And right now, Japan and Europe has DLC. We don't. They have like a free astronaut helmet. They have a free like jack-o'-lantern helmet. They have.
Wait, we're not getting those?
We are. As of right now, they're not available.
I thought when they locked in with pre-order and all that.
No, that was like different. God of War and Heavenly Sword and so these are other ones. These are ones that are on the PlayStation Store in Europe and Japan. And that free things are cool when we get them. But then there's a MotorStorm outfit, and that's like £1.50. But then there was like a rare this week only T-shirt that's £4.95, and that's like $9 fucking for a
T-shirt. It's like basically like 10, right?
For a T-shirt you put on your Sackboy, and that is Highway Rob.
Velocity Girl's gone to Sony, and she's getting paid.
I mean, that T-shirt better like.
What's it a T-shirt of?
I don't even know.
And do they send you a real one?
It's a Paul Smith. It's Paul Smith.
So
very exclusive.
I think that pricing structure needs to be reevaluated.
Wow. I mean, if they think that there are people that will actually drop that much money on a T-shirt for Sackboy?
Exactly. It's a problem.
Wow.
Yeah.
Should I go ahead and lay out my Insomniac should now tune out of the podcast?
Time to talk about Resistance?
If you work for Insomniac or Sony, you might want to tune out of the podcast for the next 20 minutes or so, because I have a couple of things to say about Resistance 2.
I wish I could have brought my friend Charlie or my friend Sterling on here to be counterpoint to you, because I haven't really played this game at all. So I agree with you until I play it. I don't know.
Okay, well, so let me say one thing. I have been anticipating the single-player campaign for Resistance 2 since the time I watched the end of the Resistance 1 campaign, and the Resistance 2 campaign starts off with right there. It actually starts off with the end of the FMV that ended Fall of Man. And that's pretty much the high point for it, because I have to say that I'm just going to say right now, Resistance 2 is one of the poorer AAA allegedly shooters in single-player campaign that I have ever played.
So, I mean, we brought up like the big...
It is one of the poorer shooters I have ever played. Ever. It has so many... it has problems. You know what? It's like... Dave and I were having this conversation yesterday, and it's almost as if the design flaws in Resistance 2 are the sort of things you would have expected the first time around. Rather than
have you just not played a lot of first-person shooters?
Yeah,
or are you blanking out an awful lot of the shitty ones?
I think what he was saying is that AAA, big, high-profile games.
Okay,
John, there are so many mistakes in this. In the single-player portion, it is absolutely mind-boggling.
Like, is it obvious level design problems, or is it the big showpiece events don't come off right?
Yeah,
I think it's a combination of both.
So first of all, the level design, such as it were, is kill room after kill room after kill room, where basically you're set inside a area, and the area is very well defined, and you know when you enter the area, because once you've entered that area, there's no way to go back. Either you came over a ledge that you can't mount and get back up, or a door closes from behind, or you're sealed off into a level.
That's pretty traditional,
right? And that's not too dissimilar.
Once you're sealed into this space, a overwhelming onslaught of aliens just comes streaming at you, and once you've killed them, you can then wander around that level as much as you want, move through whatever connector space there is to the next kill room, and it happens over again.
You just described every first-person shooter.
I didn't.
He described every first-person shooter on paper.
Right.
But I would say like the execution here just doesn't work in that inside these rooms where things are going on, it's not that much variety. Like, it is really plain Jane, shoot, kill, move on, shoot, kill, move on, and it just doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like.
I mean, how is that different from Gears of War?
It doesn't reward you.
I haven't played enough Gears of War 2 yet to tell you, but I would say that you're probably right. It probably doesn't differ a lot.
But Doom, a game like Doom 3, everyone made.
God,
but for real, that wasn't that long ago. Everyone was like, "Oh, Monster Closets, the design's boring, but it has good graphics. Let's give it a 9." And it seems like the standard you're holding this game to is like, well, you need to fucking blow my mind away with your design.
Yeah, okay, I will,
guys. Of your
I've played Resistance 2 and I've played Gears 2. Some of the things they do from a design perspective in Gears 2 completely blows this game out of the water.
I know there's one level that everyone really thinks is really creative in Gears. There's nothing like that in Resistance.
Absolutely.
Right?
And for all the talk of scale that went around with Resistance 2, Gears 2 really delivers it, specifically in certain levels, especially one level right at the end of the game. But
okay, let's not move into Gears yet. Like in Resistance 2, there's no flow.
Don't you think the existence of Gears 2 and how good it is casting Resistance 2 in a worse light? Just because they're up against each other, and everyone's making that comparison.
I mean, Garnet hasn't played Gears 2 at all.
I really haven't played
honestly, I did play Gears 2 first before I played Resistance 2. But I played obviously the single player and co-op multiplayer, I see them as completely separate games.
I mean, look, I'm fully human, and yeah, part of what I'm expressing is...
You're fully human?
I thought you were half cyborg.
I am having an emotional response. I have had an emotional response to Resistance 2, which is that the single player campaign definitely has disappointed me significantly.
I fully respect
on many levels.
Let me
give you some other pieces real quickly. First of all, after going through the entire first game, which was really built up this whole sort of similar to an X-Files sort of mystique, like what's going on? Are the Chimerian a virus? Are they alien? Is it some kind of weird experiment go wrong? What the hell's happening in the world? All of this great build-up. Resistance 2 not only opens the kimono and shows you everything, a big portion of it showing you everything is a 30-second long conversation with the obligatory crazy Russian scientist in an elevator where he lays out the entire story of what's happened in Resistance in about what would have been maybe 300 to 500 words of prose. It's really, you wasted my time. You wasted all that story effort to have some jackass scientist just tell me the story. That pisses me off so bad. It pisses me off so bad that I went through all that work to get there to have some jackass Russian scientist explain it all to me. It's like,
I don't think he was looking to discount all the hard work you placed into the first game. I think he was trying to catch people up on the story.
But there's so much more elegance they could have put into the storytelling.
I'll tell you my experience with the game. My problem with the game is
compare that to Half-Life.
I could give a shit about the story.
I totally give a shit.
I barely give a shit about the story in Gears of War 2.
You were carrying that keepsake photo in your wallet. I saw it. There was one crystal tear as you clutched it to your breast.
But my problem is that the encounters, especially towards later in the game, the encounters with the enemies are poorly balanced and poorly laid out. And also the way they deal with this, with the original game, you carry just about any weapon you wanted to. Now you're restricted to only carrying 2 weapons.
Well, I like that. I mean, I'm cool with that.
But you say they always give you the weapon you
my
need
problem
right
is
there.
30
right?
seconds before you run into an encounter, they give you the weapon that you're going to have to use, and based on the weapon they're giving you, you know exactly what you're getting ready to encounter right around the corner.
That's very true.
Here's a lark. There's going to be some spiders. Oh, by the way, the spiders, you can only kill them from this one room over to the side, because otherwise they're going to turn and you don't do much
it's funny.
damage.
It's very much a learn by dying game.
My big concern about this game was after E3 when they showed us that giant Monstar in the city, and it kind of went over like a lead balloon because it seemed rough around the edges and really canned.
It is.
And I was like,
all of them.
And I was like, I hope they're not all like that, because I like big showy showpieces that blow you away with a big Monstar. And,
they're all extremely canned.
They're just boring. I mean, look.
But they shouldn't be. They should be exciting.
Look. Bosses in shooters rarely, if ever, work, and I think that the only time that I've really had a good time, like the only time I found that it was in a first-person perspective and boss really worked was Metroid Prime. And Metroid Prime isn't even really a shooter.
Right.
I mean, it's a different sort of game.
Now that Gears is out, and speaking of bosses, I want you to talk about the fact that Gears and Resistance 2 have like the same fucking boss. It's like they both have a squid, right?
But they do have they have a water boss where you're you're on this platform.
That would be the Kraken. Kraken.
You're on this platform in the middle of the water, but it's interesting how you affect these bosses is completely different. In Resistance 2, they have given you a weapon right before time.
Like the squid harpoon?
The only weapon that can damage it. Because every other enemy that you encounter in the water, even though they're 6 inches away from you, you shoot them, it does no damage.
There's no water in Resistance 2. Let's be clear about this. There is lava. There is lava that looks like water, but it is lava because
I saw the water like in the forest.
There's tons of water.
It's all lava.
All the areas of water that you can actually go to,
you die immediately.
If you step into it, there are these chimeran swimming beasts that kill you instantly.
There's these giant swimming things that you can see, you can shoot, but you cannot damage. And anytime you hit the water, you are basically dead within 10 seconds.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. In my book, that's lava.
But getting back to these bosses, I mean, specifically in Resistance 2, they basically give this weapon. You wait for it to pop out, and you shoot it 4 times. It's dead. That's it. In Gears, it's a little more interesting. And to be honest, like that boss encounter in Gears is the most frustrating boss you fight. You start out, you're on this boat in the middle of this lake underground. These tentacles come out of the water. You have to shoot them. They then slam down on the boat. They're trying to pull the boat down underneath the water. You have to move up, chainsaw them, do that a couple of times. This thing swims around, like bites the front of the boat. You have to do something to make it open its mouth. You then have to go inside its mouth and shoot it and throw grenades and do it a few times. It blows up. I see that as like, it seems like, I don't know, to me that's more than a set piece. You're at least, there's some strategy involved to it. You have to kind of think about it and understand how to take it down.
Going through like a quick time event.
Exactly.
So I talked to the Insomniac guys a little while ago, and they were talking about the themes of Resistance 2, and they said that it's 2 stories basically. It's the invasion of America. It's the destruction of America with the Chimeran forces coming in from the east and the west, and it's moving towards the heartland of America,
right?
Which is the sort of meta story, and then the micro story is the sort of conflict within thing, that Nathan being slowly eaten alive by the virus.
They throw that in your face.
But I mean, is it how well realized are they? I mean, there's these 2 stories where it's Nathan fighting 2 things.
I'll hit on both of those. First thing being, these are real world settings in the United States, and if you're from the United States, they should evoke like an emotional response. One of the earlier levels is San Francisco. We all live in San Francisco. Most of the level is underground, and when you finally do come above ground, you see this bridge, which I still don't know if it's the Bay Bridge or the
I think it's supposed to be the
Golden Gate Bridge.
I'll tell you which one it is. It's neither, because it looks like neither of them, and we all know what they look like. Like the Golden Gate Bridge is an American icon, and the Bay Bridge has been an icon since the Loma Prieta.
Is it
earthquake.
orange?
Well, it is orange.
It's orange.
Okay, well there you go.
It's orange, but it has concrete supports, and it looks like the Bay Bridge, sort of, except it's not double decker, and it's not
right across the water where you see like things being blown up, it looks like Oakland.
This is an alternate reality. It isn't meant to be a historical retelling.
Look, there are you ask about how well they do that part.
History.
It is.
The Coming to America part, one of the things that occurred to me last night, a lot of people have seen a movie called Red Dawn. Okay, so in Red Dawn, there's the downed fighter pilot who at one point sits down and draws, on the ground with his stick. He's like, well, this is America, and here's where they came in from Mexico, and here's where they landed. You never get that part. You never get any sense of what happened. Apparently, parts of the northeast have fallen and parts of the northwest
and apparently
have fallen.
Utah is shockingly more important to the America than I thought it was.
Utah is important. You go to what is that? Idaho Falls. You go to this little small town that could have been like this really cool Andy Griffith sort of like.
What
place.
I want to get back to is that you're supposed to be these specific places in the United States, and yet they all come off feeling very generic. Chicago, for example, just looks like a generic metropolitan center, and you wouldn't even know if it was Chicago, except for the first shot when you land there is a big theater that has the word Chicago on it. That slowly pans down the theater.
I mean,
right, but okay,
what's Chicago? Chicago could have been waterfront. Right. It could have been Soldier Stadium, Soldier Field. It could have been.
How about a shootout in Wrigley Field?
But okay,
shootout in Wrigley.
How would you compare your disappointment in this battle for the Earth compared to like Halo's battle on Earth, where you're in like Africa or like this? These are like landmarks.
Right, but this takes place in the 20th century in areas. I've never been to New Mombasa. Have you ever been, Shane? Do you know what it looks like?
Maybe.
But I have been to Chicago.
You know what? I will fully agree with you, Shane. This same degree of disappointment, like Halo 2, I was furious when they took me out of. First of all, when I was in someplace in Africa, didn't even know where it was, had no connection, and then next thing I know,
mall.
I'm on another freaking
Halo in Africa.
Same degree of disappointment.
Man, you guys, the bile.
And then there's all kinds of other problems. There's inconsistencies. Like you go into Idaho Falls.
Please calm down a little bit because I can't hear you.
I think Resistance 2 killed your dog.
But it did. My main problem with the game is that it feels there's squandered after opportunity after squandered opportunity where they could have done something really cool, and what it ends up being is something kind of mediocre.
But for the record, neither of you have gotten to the shocking cliffhanger ending.
I talked to Scooter about the shocking cliffhanger ending.
So,
it's like a partial
before you do
cliffhanger.
this, I mean, you talked about the kind of the meta battle thing, which is just the obvious thing, the Chimeran threat. I mean, how do they handle? Because it took a while for them to really get going in Resistance 1 with dealing with Nathan's thing. I mean, there was the stuff with the diaries and the female. There was the woman voiceover, which in Resistance. I mean, to your point about them serving up the story in big, clumsy chunks, I mean, Resistance 1 did that as well. And
you articulated that very well for me. Thank you.
Everyone was fine with Resistance 1, where it was like, bang, 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 I'm shooting these, like, annoying fucking little creature things that are coming out of the drains in the ditch I can't get out of. I mean, we all got this last time, and it got 9s and 10s. And then you get the, here's the diary where the woman lays out, this exposition that takes 2 minutes and explains everything that you had no way in hell of learning from the gameplay. And we were all fine with it.
Okay, so you're supposed to be protecting America, right? As far as I know, there is no America left. I've not seen any citizens that are alive. I've heard a somewhat humorous AM style or FM radio broadcast dude of a guy who, like, as you go through different places as the timeline progresses, you hear him like going through, like, describing where he is coming under assault and seeing some people getting attacked, and it gets progressively worse, and he starts drinking. Anyway, that's kind of funny, but I have not seen anybody alive, any indication there's anybody alive. There's like, what am I saving? I'm saving nothing. There's nothing left to save anymore.
That does sound like a missed opportunity because it's the little details. I mean, the devil's in the details,
right.
And like seeing people fleeing and stuff.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful,
So, and then the other part is that Nathan himself is an analog for the entire threat, right? Because he is being
slowly eaten away,
slowly consumed.
He's been compromised. He's an American who's been compromised.
And the Chimeran soldiers, where there are high densities of Chimeran soldiers, they are humans that have been infected, right? That have been
some of them are, and some of them aren't. There's a difference there.
But the way they...
The difference between the
I mean, this is
Cloven
purely
and
based on
others.
a conversation with the guys at Insomniac. They led me to believe that the real drama was what was going on within the hero. I mean, how do they... I haven't played it at all yet, so...
Yeah.
Okay, so the problem there is that, especially as the transitions between the levels progress, because I've just gotten to the transition, I just passed the transition to the very final level, and it was very perfunctory. It was almost like, okay, we give up. We're not even going to try and explain to you what happened over the last 12 hours. You went from one part of the world to another part of the world, and you're now here, and the reason that you didn't get the... Another spoiler alert. The reason you didn't get the magic serum that would have helped you not turn is never explained. There's no reason, given the amount of time that's passed. Like, you keep going, it's like they keep warning you, hey man, maybe you should get some inhibitor. And he keeps on like going, no, I'm going to keep fighting for another level, and I'm going to keep fighting for another level, and I'm going to keep fighting for another level, and I'm going to keep fighting for another. I'm a rebellious dude. I'm going to keep fighting for another level.
Sounds like he's a maverick.
He's a maverick. He is a maverick. He's a maverick.
Okay, so Garnet, do you ultimately feel like this whole game was compromised because they bit off more than they can chew? They tried to do 60-player multiplayer, co-op, all of this in like a tight development cycle.
I feel that single player suffered because of all the things they did with multiplayer and co-op.
Okay, so let's talk about that. I mean, you don't like the single player, but it has a completely separate up to 8 player co-op,
right?
Which has RPG elements too.
Which is why I think as a package, it's a pretty good package. It's just the single player. It's just the single player is mediocre.
That's all I want to talk about right now, because the servers for live retail just came on this week on Tuesday, and I've only played co-op, and co-op with real people, like having a broader audience, has lived up to being a lot of fun. Co-op is really, really cool.
Yeah. It seems like they put a lot of, because there's no...
And they put a ton of work in.
There's no looting. Like, if you're playing in a team, everybody gets
everything's
benefits. Everything's self-contained.
You can track your stats.
You can upgrade, outfit your character different ways.
So if you're playing with someone that's way better than you, it's not like... You're not going to feel like diminished in ability.
And one of the interesting things is you can actually play levels that you haven't unlocked yet, as long as you're playing with someone who has unlocked it.
And even better, that co-op is dynamic. So you might be playing a level in co-op that you've played before, but the objectives will change based off of who's with you, what level they are, and how well you're doing within the level.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the co-op component is really cool.
And you can play split screen, so you can basically play 4 systems with 2 on each, right?
Yeah.
You can do that
if you
also.
want to.
But one of the things that's confusing to me, and I mean, I'll just throw this out there, is a lot of people enjoyed playing the single-player campaign of the first game co-op, and they actually took that part out. Now, I'm not saying, like, the co-op they have here is a different thing. It's like a whole other game, and it's really cool.
But you're saying this fairly mundane single-player story could have been better in co-op.
I think that was something that added to it. Like we were talking about a little bit.
Everything's more fun co-op.
Everything's more fun.
Maybe
co-op.
they'll DLC it. Maybe they'll be.
That would be awesome if they could bring that in. I think that people would really enjoy that.
Because Nathan isn't in the co-op game at all, right? It's other characters,
right?
Yeah, and so like the co-op game roughs in other parts of what's going on in the world around you during this conflict, right? It's
kind of a parallel.
It just happens to be more interesting.
Well, it's not. It's honestly like the stuff that's going on is not that interesting even co-op, but it's the experience of joining with like friends and working your way through these different environments with, blow this up,
co-op
go here. It's more dynamic.
It's a World of Warcraft instance. There are 3 roles. You must have someone, at least one person, playing each of the 3 roles.
Yeah, but you can hot swap, right?
You can hot swap, but you must have at least to get through them. You're going to have at least one person playing each of the roles, and they have to know what they're doing. And there is definitely a tank and a DPS and a healer, and it's very much like going through a World of Warcraft instance. And if you've done that before, it's a lot of fun. And like, would you had a group that's working? I mean, I've had a couple of groups that worked, and it was a blast. We had a great time. And the interface with the net, where you can like look up your stats and compare to friends, and the party system, myresistance.net. All of that works exceedingly well.
So you don't hate everything.
I think it's worth noting. There's a lot of people that play on PSN that don't play with a headset.
Yes,
you can't play Resistance 2 without a headset.
Absolutely
not. You've got to talk to other people.
Yeah, get a headset.
Like, I mean, yeah, absolutely. And the multiplayer stuff, like the 6-player deathmatch is kind of frenetic, and I don't like it as much as I actually like the objective-based games. And I've talked about this before. But like the 60-player objective-based stuff, if you have a team of people that you can communicate with effectively, you basically have like an anti-squad on the other team, and you guys are the ones that are fighting most of all, and then you can kind of squeeze off to the side and take out some other enemies at the same time. Like, that stuff I think works really, really well.
So now that I've caught my breath, and yes, I did have an emotional response, it really frustrated me because I've been looking forward to Resistance to a ton. Let me give you some of the comments from users at myresistance.net. Vitamin Resist says that Resistance 2 is 1, an improvement over the original in every way imaginable. 2, beautifully rendered, smooth and shiny, all around well done. Online play is terrific. There's something for every single style of player out there. Story is meh, but the game is engaging, alternating between sweat-inducing firefights and creep and hide sniping, and a PS3 title worthy of the system. So, that's pretty high praise. Another user on myresistance.net, Classified, said, personally, after playing through R2 single player, and especially through a few levels of multiplayer, I have the most annoying feeling of disappointment in the final product. Don't let the smile fool you. I was ecstatic with the collector's edition, but this game just could have been so much better, and I think I'm going to have to be the one who is going to say it, since I just say it like it is. Anyway, he goes on and says some of the stuff we completely talked about, but he says some of the things that were completely removed really frustrated him, some of the elements that were removed from competitive, and also everyone wants the arc cannon back. Well, there's a lot of people on myresistance.net that want the arc cannon back. You remember the arc cannon from the first game? A lot of people want that weapon back. He also says that the AI doesn't do anything. At least the enemies moved in Resistance Fall of Man.
I wonder if some of the stuff that people have noticed isn't there was intentionally left out so that they could re-stimulate the community by saying, hey, now the arc cannon's available for download. Everyone try playing the game again.
I don't think Insomniac's that...
You don't think that?
I don't know.
Come on.
They didn't require you to have, Ratchet and Clank Future Tools of Destruction to play the new one.
No, but I think...
I'm just saying, if they were that cynical, they would have done that.
An easy way to lift a lull is to give people something that they really want.
I would say that I have massively misread Ted Price if he did that, because I don't think Ted would do that. I don't think that'd be his style. I mean, he's a straight up guy. He's a gamer. He's cool.
No, I don't think I'm seems cynical about it. I think it's like, look, we gave you all the... I mean, it's a lot of... I mean, like it or not, it's a lot of game.
Yeah.
And if the art canon or whatever wasn't intrinsically necessary to a single player objective, they're like, hey, you know what? We'll just put it out as DLC later because it's a fan favorite. We don't need to put it in this, but it's a way to get people to come back.
There are some emphatic notes in the MyResistance.net threads that say it's not coming back, and I don't know whether I don't recall whether they were official posts or not, but it sounded pretty definitive that for some reason it wasn't coming back. So I mean, I don't know what the deal is there. Doji Kaio says it seems like a lot of people want R2 to be a rehash of R1. They tried to make the game more balanced, and they did. For all the talk of how great the carbine was in Resistance Fall of Man, everyone seems to neglect it. Sniper rifles, Larks, and 40s pretty much ran the game. Now every weapon seems pretty deadly. Carbine's lost the headshot. And he talks about how well balanced they are. And I'll say, it's one of the things I said to David is that, at least in the single-player campaign, one of the things that is fun is that the standard weapon set, the weapons you're going to use on a regular basis, are all very fun to play with.
Yeah, I mean, I use the bullseye primarily through, especially once you get the bullseye Mark II. Mark II. You get the bullseye Mark II. Like I had a lot. It's way more powerful than the original.
It's more powerful. I find the carbine to still be successful. The Marksman is the new weapon. The Marksman, which is a Chimeran, semi-auto, fires in 3.
Yeah, and I still think they have some of the most creative weapons of any shooter out there,
especially in their alt fires.
Yes,
they do very well with that.
So what it sounds like is that they built a kick-ass multiplayer game, and that the single player was not necessarily the priority. I mean, that's what it sounds like.
And that's what it feels like. I mean, I don't know, whether that's the case or not.
Because
that's what it feels like
every time I talked to Brian when he first started there, where he was always like, "Oh, it's so fun, it's awesome," and it was because they were playing multiplayer in the office all the time, and that seemed to be what it was that hooked him early on.
And kudos to the multiplayer team. I'm not bagging on the single player guys, but the multiplayer team, they did an awesome job. Like, they have put together a really good package for multiplayer.
And I think that, in the last 8 years of console shooters, a lot of focus has been placed on making sure the multiplayer is really, really good for a really long time.
That's where you get your legs.
Right. I mean, Halo got 10s with the library because people like playing multiplayer.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. I mean, I think that a lot of what happened with Resistance reflects how well Call of Duty 4 did, and I apologize for saying that, and I'm not trying to cast aspersions on it.
Dude,
I'm just saying
Call of Duty 4 was huge.
It impacted dramatically the shooter marketplace.
Okay, well, you guys have both played the co-op Resistance 2 versus Team Fortress 2, which isn't getting supported on PlayStation 3.
Right.
You put those two games; they're both team-based. They're both.
Well, I wouldn't compare those two games.
No?
Like that. No, well, Team Fortress 2 is it's not a cooperative game. You're playing against other players.
Whoa. What'd you say?
Team Fortress 2
is not a cooperative game?
No, what I'm saying, it's you're fighting against another team. He's talking about the co-op where you're playing against...
The competitive game that works in Resistance 2 is almost like playing co-op but against another team of real people as opposed to...
I mean, that's semantics. I mean...
All right, so the co-op game is all against NPC. There's no co-op.
Yes. Right.
There's no co-op. There's no co-op combat.
Right.
So if you anything that... So it's the 64-player... massive thing where you're divided into teams still, right?
I'm telling you, the 60 player objective based game is very much co-op because you're in small squad, and then your squad is going to come up against another squad. So your squads are going to clash against you're going to clash squad against squad in small scale conflict, but then they'll bring you together in bigger conflicts. But
so I mean, so back to TF2, which has become kind of a if nothing else a way of judging things as a point of comparison, and particularly because it isn't being supported on PS3 anymore.
Resistance 2 is huge for this. It's huge.
And
it's got a great party system. It has a fantastic RPG. Like again, learning from COD4, you get to improve your character. There are unlockables that, as you gain experience points, you're unlocking new weapon built loadouts. You're unlocking new armor like gloves that'll help you reload faster.
Well, not just that, but you also have like power ups you can initiate using the D-pad, which
called berserks.
Yeah, which can do a multitude of things, make you take less damage.
And one nice thing about about the learn by dying single player experiences, you do get experience while you're playing the single player game.
So it has like a perk system as well.
It has a perk system.
and it's a united perk system that goes over single player, multiplayer, and co-op.
That's good.
And you can use it all, together.
Like I will come back next week and I'll talk about the Resistance 2 multiplayer because I have a bunch of multiplayer games set up, and I think the multiplayer I'm going to be really excited and happy with. It's just, hey, I'm one of those goofy guys who really does play shooters for single player experience still, and I had a high expectation for this, and it let me down. And that's just where I'm at.
So before we go on to Gears 2, there's another shooter that I want to talk about that I don't think we've ever talked about on one of yours, and I'm kind of wondering why.
Legendary?
No, Far Cry 2.
Oh, you know what? Honestly, just haven't gotten to it. I want to get to it, and I promise that I will get to it as soon as I can.
And I popped in the PS3 version, and it looks awesome.
Yeah.
After watching it on the 1UP show, I loved the graphics and the shadows, but there are complaints about it. And if you watch that segment, they're talking about how all the travel between place to place, all these random encounters versus enemies, incessant random encounters. I already knew I'm never going to finish this game if that's part of it. But I do want to try it just because the graphics are cool and it's kind of open world.
It looked like all the best bits from like something like Just Cause and bits of Stalker and bits of like a whole bunch of different kinds of shooters, and like the whole like being able to do things in the world that affect everything that's going on. I mean, it seems really ambitious.
There's no conspiracy to it. I honestly haven't gotten to it.
Likewise, I mean, it's only so many hours a day.
But it doesn't seem to be held in the same. I mean, there's like a lot of high-profile shooters that are, and it doesn't seem like people are holding it in the same regard.
Well, here's it's not the same team that made the first game.
Right.
That team went on to make Crysis.
So before we move away from that, does that impact you? Because I think that a lot of the hardcore community do kind of have from the outset said, oh, that's not a Crytek Far Cry.
I think it turned out better than anybody expected.
Yes,
it turned out way better.
I agree, but they also kind of watered down the Far Cry franchise by releasing like the kind of Xbox 360 spinoff that came out right after launch.
Yeah.
Instincts.
Yeah, and I feel like they kind of did a disservice to the brand name, and also I don't know. Just it doesn't. The marketing for that game, like during its production cycle, was kind of odd. They showed it for the first time earlier this year at GDC. They had like a tech demo, and that was it. And so, obviously, here internally, we haven't been able to see it much during the production cycle for various reasons.
Yeah, but we have it now, though.
Absolutely. But I'm just saying, like, you're talking about maybe why we haven't been talking about it leading up to it. That has a lot to do with it.
But not just you guys. I mean, like, with the exception of Sean Elliott, who was the only person that spent any time really. There doesn't appear to have been much attention put on this game.
Yeah.
And then when you pop it in and just on sort of a cursory like first play, you're like, wow, why the hell weren't people going crazy for this thing?
I think the game looks good from what I've seen of it playing on people's monitors.
It's really good.
I want to play it. I will definitely play it. And guess what, folks? Over the next 2 months, you're going to hear us talk about a lot of games.
And judging from the rage that we just experienced from you on Resistance 2, it seems like Far Cry appears to be potentially a much more satisfactory experience.
So Far Cry's really good.
Oh my god! I wish this was a fucking video show because the look that John gave me was priceless.
What's funny,
but there are a few things in Far Cry that actually kind of hold it down from like jumping up to this higher tier where everyone would be falling over it. First thing is you're infected. Spoiler alert: you're infected with malaria at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
and it hits you at random intervals, and you can never predict when it's going to happen. And it seems to invariably happen a lot during big firefights, or say you're swimming through the water and you get a malaria attack and you drown. Like that can be kind of frustrating. Another thing is all the weapons you pick up are in various degrees of operability, where someone's been shooting you for 5 minutes with a gun and it works great, and you eventually kill them. You pick the gun up from them and all of a sudden it starts jamming on you. Little things like that. But I can't wait to play Far Cry. Like, quite honestly,
it has weapon degradation due to weather as well, which I thought was interesting. Is that but
it's only degradation when you have the weapon.
Yeah, so if you're fighting when it's raining, the gun will get rusty.
Yeah, and of course, like the map creator part of it is incredibly robust, and
all right, so we all agreed that we're going to get to Far Cry at some point. There are going to be a lot of games in the next 6 weeks.
There's coverage I want to
There's no grand conspiracy keeping us from talking about Far Cry 2.
I just think it's interesting that for how good it appears to be, that just in general everybody has been so focused on Resistance versus Gears that this other game is just sort of
I think it's a brilliant example of how smart it was for Project Origin, now Fear 2, to get out of Q4 and into next year, and how silly it is that Activision was insistent on putting Quantum of Solace and
Call of Duty
World at War in this same window with Gears and Resistance.
I will say, I talked to like 2 or 3 different people who played Call of Duty, I mean not Call of Duty, Far Cry 2, and who liked it, but their big complaint at the end was it has a similar problem to Assassin's Creed, and that Ubisoft has like this great idea, and then they kind of didn't have enough stuff to fill it in, so they kind of copy-paste all these random encounters. So, but it's still it's very pretty and interesting and has stuff to offer.
And yeah, exactly. And I think if you want to speak intelligently, much like, I think Sean Elliott said this a few months ago, if you want to speak intelligently about shooters, you should try to experience, every different type of shooter you can. And I think this is one of those, because of the open world nature of the environment and the way the weather affects.
Okay, so since we haven't played it,
we will be playing it.
Let's drop the conversation there, because before this becomes the 5-hour podcast, we want to talk about Gears, because you love Gears.
Yeah, I'm disappointed. No one else has played it. Obviously, I'm just guessing.
I gave my copy to Nelson because I'm too bad.
I do want to play it.
Do you have a copy?
I just got it today.
So guess what? You won't have any problem playing it, because, as Shane points out, and people do hold us accountable for at times, my friends list was blowing up with Gears
everyone here has been playing it till 4 in the morning every night.
Honestly, I want to thank the fine people at 7-Eleven who were able to provide me with this game before launch, before we got copies from Microsoft. Those good folks, they are providing a great service, and they should be commended for it.
For breaking street dates.
And not just for Slurpees.
Not just, that was complimentary with the game.
You got to be like, what are you going to do? We only sell a couple of games a year. This was one of them.
Well, I know. I went in there Tuesday. They had Gears 2, they had Fallout 3, they had Quantum of Solace, all on the back counter.
Nice.
Right next to the Condom and Hustler mags.
Well, fantastic.
You're like one of each.
I'll take a copy of Gears, some porn, and some Johnnies.
This is the greatest day ever.
Some what?
Johnnies?
Sorry, I just got back from England. Some Johnnies.
So they call it a condom. Okay, I was big fun. Over the weekend, I was watching you play some Gears 2, and you were playing these really cool and creative multiplayer levels. One where there's an avalanche that changes the
geometry of the level.
Another one where this razor sharp rain comes intermittently and hurts you. I think that's really, really clever, and that's great. But then the other thing I was watching the enemy AI, because you're fighting against all these bots, and at first it seemed like, the AI is pretty good, but then
I had the bot sent to dumb.
The more I watched, I was like, I don't know about those bots.
I was capturing
footage.
I'm
glad they were sent to dumb, because I watched them stand there in front of you and go,
I had them set to casual, and basically the AI, when it's set to casual, you have to go out of your way to die.
Okay,
it's designed for people that don't play shooters.
The AI was like, this looks really easy.
Yeah,
that was my only concern.
No, it's if you want to see a better example of enemy AI in the game, is check out some of the Horde footage from the One Out Show segment. Hopefully a lot of it's in there. If not, we can put it out there standalone. But Gears 2, I was a very big fan of the original Gears of War, despite its many flaws. And much like movies, when you go into a sequel that's been hyped up dramatically, it's very easy to be disappointed. And I have to say, this game did not disappoint me at all. Single player, co-op, multiplayer. At any point was I disappointed in it, because they take some pretty interesting design choices in the game, and that the first level you play looks very much like the original Gears of War. And as I was making my way through that level, I thought,
the first level, the whole damn game looks like Gears, other than they added some colors and light.
How many levels have you made it through, Garnet?
I've watched people play everything from the Derek levels, from the entry levels to the exit level, and I've even watched the final level. I watched you play the final level.
The book end of the game looks a lot like you didn't watch the entire end.
I watched the underground part. I watched the part with the river. I watched how much more do I need to see?
That one level they showed E3 where you're in an elevator going sideways. That was really cool and different looking to me. I don't know.
That was cool looking.
That was cool.
I think it's easy to pick out individual parts of levels that look very similar to Gears of War. It's a consistent universe.
It looks like Unreal Engine 3.
Yeah, it is.
I was making fun of it.
Yeah, it is Unreal Engine 3.
Couldn't you also say that that's actually a high point of it, is that it has an art style that's very well defined, and that art style is cohesive, and you know when you're looking at Gears, you know that you're looking at Gears.
But for me, they step outside of the art style and do different things, like putting you in a snowy environment, putting you in an organic environment that you've never seen anything like.
That level
this.
Sounds really cool.
You've never seen anything like this.
I hadn't heard about
that. Inside of a beast.
I don't want to talk about too much, because that's
cool.
It is such an interesting experience.
Was it reverse style?
but there are even platforming elements. I mean, Cliff has obviously talked in the past that he sees it kind of like a horizontal platformer where you're moving from cover to cover. But this, they actually take it to where you're basically going through a Bowser's castle environment with a little like Contra thrown in for good measure.
Okay, so from Gearheads of War, Machette said that if he was to describe the difference between Gears 1 and Gears 2 in one word, that word would be tighter. Sliding into cover and SWAT turning are now much more quicker and can be interrupted. Overall, the cover system is much more polished than in the original, and I haven't had one of those frustrating Gears 1 moments where you get stuck on cover.
Yeah,
do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think, well, actually, I don't necessarily agree with that. You do get stuck into cover occasionally, and that was one of our consistent gripes in our reviews in EGM, is that you still do run into some of the situations where you'll pop into cover the opposite direction for which you were intending to, or stick to cover when you don't mean to. But I do feel like they definitely iterated and polished the hell out of this game. As a total package, it's hard to find a really strong weak point with it at this point, because it does deliver
a really strong weak point.
Yeah, that's a poor choice of words.
Weak point.
A major thing. Whereas the original,
I'm going to hit it for massive damage.
The original Gears of War had interesting concept, looked amazing. Single player story was like, you could just leave it. It was whatever. And an incredibly flawed multiplayer. Incredibly frustrating, flawed multiplayer that once you've played it for any amount of time, you
sounds like a B- C+.
There were serious problems with the netcode. Most of that stuff you didn't realize until months after launch, which is why it's so incredibly difficult to review multiplayer games. But for this, like they move you around the world so much, but it's one cohesive journey. In Resistance 2, they move you around all over the United States, but you're hopping on a helicopter going here and there, but it all feels kind of disjointed. Here, they are moving you around a lot, but so much of it is you're moving on foot, and it's a more logical progression based on like the story and what you're trying to accomplish. That is to say that they definitely tried to do some more emotional things with the story, and that works.
Come on,
my big
come on. We got to stop here because I got to say, like Gears 1, like if Gears 2 single player experience is as good as Resistance 2's, which you heard me just get upset about, I would be stunned, because Gears 1 was like.
Wait, the story? You're saying if the story in Gears 2 is as good as Resistance 2, you'd be stunned?
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, because Gears 1 was.
All right. Before you even answer, I'm gonna say the first Gears. I've only played a little bit of it, but like I remember Epic acted like the story was God's gift to
right.
story.
And obviously,
and then most people agreed that it was actually kind of dumb. But this time, everyone I talked to was like, "No, this time they got the story. It's really good." I'm like,
"Wait, who have you been talking to? Not me."
Dan Shu. Like,
has he played through it?
He has.
No,
and
come on, of course Shu has.
But I have to wonder, is the story actually really, really good on like a real narrative level, or just because you like this game so much and it is better than the first one?
It's a Michael Bay popcorn ride.
Tom, come on, go get him.
And if you hop on and enjoy it, like it's a great ride from beginning to end.
But if you want your life to be like touched by this moving narrative, that's not okay. Because some people have been saying like, no, really, the story is like Oscar caliber story or something. Like, really?
Well, there is a beautiful love story with Dom. I mean, they finally.
Yeah, how does that handle? Like, do you think it comes off well?
You know what?
Because Cliff did put a little picture that you're supposed to carry in your wallet of Dom.
Yeah,
and his
I don't
girlfriend.
understand what that's even
right. So
why that's supposed.
I mean,
to
that's a selling point on the back of the box. I'm like, all right. So obviously, they think the story means a lot more this time.
I think when you spend years on a project, it's very easy to kind of get in a bubble and think something maybe.
But they've hired professional Hollywood screenwriters.
Right. No, the story is better than the first one, but kind of by default it would have to be, because the first one basically might as well not have had a story. But from an emotional perspective, there's one key. Dom is trying to find his wife. Dom being Marcus's sidekick, and the conclusion of that I feel is kind of really heavy-handed and doesn't necessarily work as well as they thought it would. There is one moment and one line that's delivered there that I think works really well, but outside of that,
But it's a game like RE4. Like, the story doesn't really matter.
No,
you're having a fun time.
It's a machismo fest. You have a fucking chainsaw on your gun.
It's a ride.
How much?
But I think maybe they shouldn't.
The people who got those, dude, you don't have one because you didn't get one.
Oh, my life is so not complete because I don't have a chainsaw gun. I know you're hoarding yours. You sleep with it every night.
Well, but it's funny because I brought up the Wired review. Right now, the lowest review for this game is an 8 from Wired.
And it opened.
And the first line from this is, "I would have really liked this when I was in high school." And when I think about it, I think it might be intentional. And Epic and Microsoft acting like this story is the best story ever. Because I think if you were 13, you might actually think this was the best story ever.
I think Epic and Microsoft did themselves a bit of a disservice by hyping up the story so much, because I don't think it delivers as well as they think. But it is a really fun ride from beginning to end. And there aren't many parts of the story where you just sit back and kind of cringe. It's, there's a lot of snickering and laughing and appreciating like the ridiculous, caricatures that inhabit this world.
I mean, somebody was telling me there's one line where I wish I knew the quote, but do you know this quote where it's like, that's a shitload of somethings, and it's like, that's 10 shitloads of something. Someone else says. I'm like, what?
Yeah, no, I
don't know the quote, but
you're not far off.
Yeah.
I mean,
all right, so you're not the only person who picked it up at 7-Eleven. Several folks over on GAF, that's the Gaming Age forums, picked it up. King Groin said that the game is pretty good and very familiar for a Gears fan, that the gameplay doesn't really stray from original concepts. The new additions help keep things fresh. Says visually you won't be impressed at first. A couple hours later, however, you'll start to see things that'll completely blow you away. Texture pop-in almost non-existent. Mm-hmm. Loading is great. Cutscenes, etc. Soundstage is great. Does say that everything runs without a hitch. It just might not blow you away like the first one did.
Yeah, there are a few sequences in the game that will blow you away, and if it doesn't, there's something wrong with you.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. One of the biggest problems with the first Gears was the one vehicle level where you had to fly around and shine a flashlight on these beasts that would kill you.
Yeah, the one where you're like driving and you have the light beam,
which was terrible.
It was very bad.
It was terrible. It's surprising how many vehicular encounters are actually in Gears 2. There are
It's funny that you say that, because McBacon says that the game is an inconsistent experience, and while I adore the core cog shooting Locust with cover mechanic and all the cool things they managed to mix up, the driving segments, the on-rail shootings, the turret bits, almost all shit.
Shit is a strong, but they're not nearly as fun as the other elements of it. There's one sequence where you're riding in a helicopter, and it basically controls like a Halo, turret or whatever, mm-hmm. and you're driving and shooting, and the controls are very similar. Those things don't work as well as when you're on foot, but they're not bad anymore. They no longer take away from the overall experience. And if you play through the entire game, there's one vehicular section at the end, which is the ultimate cherry on top of the entire game, which is a lot of fun. You're basically God at this point. You just reach out and touch people, and they die. And it's a lot of fun.
Okay, so as promised, we have Rick Arek chiming in from GAF, and he's going to talk to you. Maybe he might be one of those people that something's wrong with him, because he says, my fears have become reality. The single player is a Call of Duty 4 wannabe, looks bloody amazing, Underground is oh my god, but it tries to offer you set pieces like COD4 and fails.
I mean, that's an interesting comment. I mean, I don't know exactly what he's even referring to be honest. There are things in the...
Big set pieces.
Right, exactly. But what does he mean by big set pieces? I mean, is he just talking about the environment and like the levels? I mean, I don't...
I would think he means like specific setups with like big monsters, or
right.
he's kind of Sarah Palin on it, isn't he?
Well, it sounds
like, what do you mean by
from
big
what you
set
said
pieces?
earlier on, it sounds like the giant squid. That sounds like a set piece.
Yeah, and it works pretty well. I mean, it's not a great encounter, and actually it was really frustrating. If you don't know how to fight this beast at the beginning, you're going to die, and you're going to die a lot. I had to play through it at least 12 times when I was reviewing it. It was the most frustrating part of the game.
Whoa, dude, that's pretty frustrating.
But, if you're playing it cooperatively, it is a completely different experience. You'll beat it first or second try.
Okay, you said Gears 1, the multiplayer component was broken.
Yeah.
And I would argue that broken, technically though it might have been, I think that one of the things that gave Gears legs and actually contributed in great part to its legacy is how popular Gears multiplayer was.
Yeah, and I think it succeeded despite itself.
So they've really done some good stuff with Gears 2 multiplayer, right? I've seen like a lot of people are excited about Horde, and then you can play, like I watched you and Jason playing cooperatively, and it looked like the levels have actually been thought out this time to include multiple pathways if you're playing co-op.
Right. Well, they always had multiple pathways. They were a little more generic, a little more binary, like you're going to go this way or that way, and they still have those, but they also have other areas where you can just choose to have one person sit back with a sniper rifle or use whatever weapon. The mortar is one of the new weapons, which basically it's exactly what it sounds like. You plant a mortar and you have to like set the arc and try to like destroy as many guys as possible.
That's kind of cool.
It's a skill-based weapon. It's difficult to use at first, but once you figure out how to do it and you take out like your first like line of locusts that are running towards you, it's incredibly satisfying. And I think one of the things this game does well and does better than most shooters is that the story is take it or leave it, whatever. But at its core, it's a fun experience from beginning to end. Like, you can play it on any difficulty you want to. If you're playing cooperatively and you're playing with someone that doesn't play a lot of shooters, they can be playing on casual and you can be playing on hardcore. And it balances the game accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's incredible, and it works really well. I've played with several people who aren't big shooter people, but they were able to have fun with it, and they didn't have to feel that they were handicapping me, like I was having to babysit them, because it was really fucking hard for them to die.
Right.
They could go out there and do dumb stuff and not necessarily be beaten over the head about it, because I think the guys at Epic, they get that these games are supposed to be fun, and they generally...
Well, I got to read you this comment because it's fucking awesome. Where is it? All right, so... Finkel, which is Finkl, this is from Game Age. Played the Horde, blah 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 blah. Says, okay, so he got his wife to start playing with him, and she doesn't play FPS, so I put it on casual. I told her to go upstairs and press A and shoot from above the railing thing. I also told her I'll watch the stairs since it's the only place they could get to her. She's like, "Oh my God, something big is coming. My control is vibrating. I got the stairs. Don't worry." As I dash through the middle area, next thing you know, she's getting whacked by a boomer, laughing my fucking ass off. That's pretty funny, actually. It's funny, but it's amazing. He actually got his wife to play with him.
Yeah. I mean, who knows how widespread that would be, because it is incredibly violent, cartoony.
Dude, Suzanne not playing with me.
It's funny. Mike Cruz, one of our art director, his girlfriend was watching him play because she's into the story and wants to see what happens to Dom's girlfriend. No shit.
Wow.
I didn't say that, but if I'd said that, I would have been accused of shilling for someone.
Dude, you have been shilling for the last 15 minutes.
Yeah, I didn't get to what else I was playing. I'll save them for the future. Persona 4 for PS2. I'm just 10 hours in, so I'm still at it.
And
it's great. If you like Persona 3, it's a must buy.
And although not in our news, they announced that is the definitive collection. There's not going to be an FES. There's not going to be. 4 was kind of a bonus that it's on PS2. Like 3 was such a success. So we'll do it again. So this is the full version. So you don't have to worry about a special edition coming later.
Coming in December for PS2.
Go get Persona 4 if you're into that. Wow.
That's a lot of games.
Epic.
2 hours of us talking about what the fuck we're playing.
Brian, James, Ted, Insomniac. I do love you guys. Like part of it is an emotional thing. Like, I really wanted Resistance 2 to be great, and the single player letdown did obviously get to me. Sorry, but there you go. All right. I know. I feel like I like those guys.
You got heated. It was personal.
I know. I got upset. I apologize, but personal reaction. There you go. That's what it is. All right, stick around. We'll be right back with the news. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with that in 30. All right, we're back and ready to do the news, and we're going to do this because we've already been on for a while. We're going to do this like this. If these guys don't comment anything, we're just going to throw it out real quickly. Right. Starting off, we had a study from Pediatrics Journal that confirms, and we use the air quotes on that, a link between violent video games and aggressive behavior. That should come as a big shock to everyone, right? Anyway, the gist of this was that the research showed that there was a strong connection between exposure of young children to violent video games and their developmental trajectories.
Do we know who paid for this? That paid for the research to be done? Because almost inevitably when you have research put forward like this, whoever paid for it wanted it to say a certain thing.
There's an agenda usually.
It was in Pediatrics Journal. I would suggest that, this was various researchers from Iowa State University, the National Institute on Media and the Family in Minneapolis.
Zing! I think we have a bullseye.
Is that like the PTC? Or
sounds like it.
There's a number of other participants.
Sounds innocuous enough.
The Okanamizu University, the Keio University, the University of Tsukuba, the Takasaki.
Yes, we all realize there are a lot of universities with their hands out for grant money.
Wow, dude, that's
was
great.
it? Who did they? Who did they test? Was it boys? Was it girls? Because boys are naturally more violent anyway, and you put an experience in front of them and give them a stick, and they'll start hitting stuff with it.
For example, lightsabers.
Dodgeball made me more violent. Also.
Yeah, blah, 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 next.
Yeah, next.
Yeah.
All right, so the next things I wanted to talk about was the unfortunate discovery
actually, before we move on to the next one, there was another report this week that was done in Japan that tested, because everyone says that, Japanese are clearly able to deal with violent and sexualized media way more than the West. Because,
of course they are.
Because they get a lot of it, and violent crime is not particularly high, and And there was some study done by somebody else that said that no, it's exactly the same. That the responses from kids to violent media is exactly the same in Japan as it is in the West. It's just handled differently.
It's a societal thing.
Yeah.
Well, to wrap that piece up, by the way, the big point is that if you go back and read something like Grand Theft Childhood, The Surprising Truth About Violent Video Games, focusing a study on as a minor target as video games causes parents, social activists, and public policymakers to ignore the much more powerful and significant causes of youth violence that have already been well established. Yeah. Which relates directly to the unfortunate over glamorization of of Call of Duty 4 in the missing child in Ontario who turned up unfortunately dead in the forest. So the story is that this young man was playing Call of Duty 4 quite a bit, got in trouble with his dad. His dad kept
young too, right?
He was 13.
12, 13.
His dad kept taking away his Xbox and eventually told him, it was going to be permanent. And and young Brandon Crisp said he was going to run away. And Dad, I'm not a parent, so John, maybe you can comment. It's a bad situation. It sounds like we're definitely at odds. Dad said, "Okay, well, I'll pack your bag for you." Threw some helped him. Anyway, the young boy ran away, and he's been discovered in the woods.
But the fear was that he was abducted by people he met playing Call of Duty. There was
that angle.
And has that been discovered? No, I mean, they don't know the cause.
The foul play hasn't been ruled out, but it looks more like he just wandered off into the woods, and unfortunately,
But weren't his parents concerned about the people he was meeting playing these games? I mean, that was the angle I was reading on this story.
Well, that was one of the angles that was out there. The bigger angle that's been bubbling up in the last week, though, has been that he had a gaming addiction. That was very dangerous.
I think the angle I've read is he met unsavory characters online, and that's the threat, not that he's just playing games that makes him violent.
So the story I pulled was one off of ABC.com, and they said they got into this gaming addiction quite in depth to sensationalize it, and said the big thing that is the draw that these guys talk about it being able to create their own personas and compete with others all over the world, and then it talks about how gaming addiction progresses like other addictions, and they spend
this is the same bullshit. Dr. Phil did this a couple of weeks ago as well.
Do I really want to hear an expose on gaming addiction from an alcoholic news reporter?
Who?
Seriously, addiction is everywhere. It's anything. It's everything.
Right.
This is no worse and no different than anything.
Were you calling me an alcoholic news reporter?
No.
Oh, I thought you
Did you write the story?
No, I was.
Then no, I wasn't.
Why are you calling this?
I was referring to whoever the newsreader that inevitably read this. What I was trying to say is that there's addiction everywhere. Anything can be addicting. There are people who I'm sure are addicted to crocheting.
Well, and also maybe this father shouldn't have bought his son a mature-rated shooter.
That's also a very good point.
John, anything to add to this?
That's a fair point. I mean, I think with anything like that, if he was addicted, taking it away completely is a bad trigger, regardless. Because kids don't respond to that. Yeah, or
giving him Wii music, weaned him off.
And but the trigger for the sensationalized stories was that the trigger for him running away was the video game.
That's exactly right. It's the fact that the trigger was a video game.
It's not necessarily that the video game led to his. It could have been anything. It could have been you're watching too much TV, or it could be you're whatever. You're not masturbating too much. And he ran away because of a conflict with his mom and dad. The fact that it's games seems somewhat irrelevant without knowing the specifics.
Kids have been running away from their parents for hundreds of years.
Yeah, I mean, what do you know? The kid was doing something and his parents told him not to, and he didn't want to do that, so he ran away. I mean,
yeah, and it's once again, it is a terrible situation.
It's tragic. It's very sad what happened. I mean, I think that I hate the fact actually that video games are being brought into it.
Because
the fact
is, imagine what his dad is thinking.
It's awful.
It's just unbelievably horrible.
Yeah. Anyway, because our hearts go out to the family.
Because you do shit like that when your kids are getting to that point where they're just being so insufferable that you say something like...
Oh, yeah. I remember when I ran away one time, my mom made me a tuna sandwich.
Yeah, here you go.
Put it in my little knapsack.
Don't get hungry.
2 hours later, I came back, I was bored.
So imagine how awful it is for Dad because he's not coming home. I mean, I feel
it's horrible, but I think that the spinning the gaming element is just the media.
It's just lazy.
Being lazy, exactly.
Well, and looking for a soundbite to get them some more traffic for their websites and their
because it's more glamorous to say the video games did it than the kid was just unhappy at the time.
It's a shame. All right, so the rest of the news is not nearly so touching. DSI So we had this survey about a week ago from, what was the name of it? Because it was a magazine that you said it's much more hardcore than Famitsu.
Dengeki?
Yeah, it was Dengeki. That showed a very small percentage of people saying they were going to pick up DSIs on the first day. Well, evidently it was really hardcore because they had no problem selling out DSI in only a couple of days. They shipped 200,000 units into Japanese retailers. Within 2 days, they had sold 170,000 of them. So, needless to say, another little hardware revision, and they're selling like hotcakes again.
That's the whole idea.
They're going to ship another 100,000 next week. So, I mean, I guess the sky's the limit. You just keep on selling DSs if you're Nintendo. No problem there. Which would probably contribute to why Iwata is not very sold on decreasing the price of any hardware. In an interview with Japanese website TouchDS, he says that this is my personal thinking, but when the model's price tag drops over time, manufacturers are telling customers it's better to wait. And I've always thought that was a mistake. Well, I mean, it's pretty easy to say that when your Wii is...
Well, yeah, when demand doesn't seem to be dropping.
Yeah. When you're selling the Wii and the DS, and you can bring a new one out at a full price point, and it's selling like crazy, and your competition is lowering prices.
And I think they're also looking kind of to Apple for their pricing model. Right. You know, with the DS, they've added new functionality.
Right.
They've made it more of an elegant machine.
You iterate ahead of the sort of obsolescence pricing, which is what he's talking about. And if you keep iterating enough, like the way they're doing with the iPhone and they do with the computers every year, it's like...
This is something you talked about a year to a year and a half ago, like where Nintendo was picking up model of how they structured their business from Apple.
You keep iterating to the point where it's just a little bit better, and you never get that sort of drop off. I mean, it'll come eventually, but it's a long way off.
You have to wonder, will they be doing the same thing with the Wii?
Yeah, it took 12 years with the Game Boy, so...
Well, I mean, that is the big question. I mean, like, come on. At some point, doesn't there have to be a price drop on Wii? At some point?
When you can walk into a store and they're having trouble selling them, yeah, but it doesn't appear to be...
Which do you think will happen, you guys? Which do you think will happen? They'll iterate a new Wii, or they'll drop the price on the current one?
I think the Xbox 360 will be at $99 before the Wii is.
I think we will have a price drop before we see a new Wii.
Before we see a new Wii.
Just to $199.
But I think the inevitable drop of... I mean, the 360 and the Wii are going to be locked on the pricing battle. I think we'll see the arcade at $99 before we see the Wii.
I'm going to pick them on the story that you guys had a few weeks ago and say that I think that they may not lower the price on the Wii.
They'll improve it.
They'll improve it. They'll add the HD functionality that you had in that story that you talked about.
And also the hard drive functionality. I mean, there are retail units now where all the game demos are on a hard drive attached to a Wii. They can do it because they're doing it.
The bigger question is, will I have actually played any games on my home Wii that I bought?
Play Galaxy. It's the best game on the system.
Yes.
All right. Blizzard wants StarCraft 2 to be, as Blizzard producer Chris Sigati put it, mom friendly. They kind of want StarCraft 2 to be MILF ready.
Where are these moms?
It's a different brand of mom.
He says it's definitely a very challenging tightrope to walk. We've tried to make sure that's perfectly balanced for esport, but look, I'm trying to get my mom to play this game. I mean, I know she can't micromanage at the level these pro gamers can, so we're actually experimenting back in the opposite direction so that even a layman can come in and get a grasp of these cool things in a game. By the way, this comes from a great interview that they had on MTV Multiplayer with the Blizzard producer.
Although I know 3 moms who love StarCraft. So,
really?
Yeah. Kim, if you're out there, she dressed as Kerrigan twice for Halloween.
Wow, that's kind of awesome. Yeah. What do you think about them? How do you first of all, am I the only person here who's been a big RTS fan at any time? Because to me,
I was like...
I'm not sure exactly how you walk that line. I mean, he says it's definitely a challenging tightrope to walk. How do you even walk that line between something that's micromanagement friendly and also easy to sit and play?
What I found that tends to, particularly with, like, moms aren't looking for that escalating tension kind of game, which RTSs are inherently, because I mean, like, a lot of moms will play Civilization and they'll play the resource managing games because they're very good at it. I mean, like, your mom, you're kind of doing it every day anyway with the family because dads are useless at it. But that kind of escalating, oh my god, there's so much stuff. It's like, it's just too much, just like, it to be fun anymore.
The Red Alert model was sort of, you know, that game where you hold on to the metal handles and they have like an electrical shock or a vibration. Yeah. You try to hold on as long as you can.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. The Red Alert 2 was sort of this strategy equivalent of that, whereas it keeps on getting more and more overload.
Although I've got to say, Red Alert 3, the fact that there is a bear gun is definitely helps alleviate that.
But
have you seen it? There's a thing. I think it's from a submarine that shoots bears.
Wow. I mean,
You can also do that in Fallout 3. You can shoot teddy bears.
But it's like you pull up outside and then it shoots bears, and then the bears all like swarm and they become a bear army.
I think
by the way, to the regular cadre of forum posters, both on the 1UP forums and GAF forums, that keep telling me to build a new computer. Yes, I know. Okay, I'm going to build one for a Core i7. Period.
I think this story is silly, but I do think that the basic tenets of RTS could be attractive to female gamers. But I think the trappings of StarCraft are not what they.
Yeah, I just don't know how you make that balance. I mean, it's almost like you have to have.
Yeah.
I think you have to have.
It's
if you're gonna do
sci-fi
it,
and it's combat oriented.
Like cooking mama's food party RTS.
Yeah.
I don't know.
to do it, I think you'd have to have almost two modes.
Yeah.
You have a one play mode that everyone's playing. Like in
You
the
have a
RTS.
Sims-like mode where you outfit your mechs.
I think you'd have to have something very similar to that. It's like sort of one clickish, very easy to play.
I think tower defense games could be a gateway drug for moms.
Yeah. Next.
Ubisoft has killed the game based on NBC's Heroes.
Well, I mean, I'd say it's not a big surprise since NBC is going about killing heroes. They fired the executive producers last week.
Yeah, it's pretty sad, isn't it?
Good riddance to bad rubbish. Lost forever.
Right.
Lost for life.
Activision had its earnings call this past week. A couple of interesting tidbits came out of that. One of them was the CEO Bobby Kotick explaining why they didn't keep Ghostbusters and 50 Cent, and it basically came down to the fact that they couldn't keep milking them year after year. They're not sustainable franchises. They're just one-offs.
It's funny because they could be sustainable franchises. Because, I mean, 50 Cent is G-Unit is a brand. You could do whatever you wanted with it.
He's dropping new albums regularly. You could put a game tie-in to the album.
Well, the accompanying film for his new album, Before I Self-Destruct, appears to be the worst movie ever made. and
you've seen some bad movies.
And I like some 50 Cent, so it looks horrific. But I think the more troubling thing is the next Activision news story.
Right, so before we leave that away, I mean, the thing for me that's scary is Activision is painting themselves very much into a corner of being what the hardcore are going to call bad guys. I mean, these guys
transparently, like,
they're
consumer fuckers that they're becoming. I mean, like, and this goes on to the Guitar Hero thing as well.
Read the next news story.
All right, so because that is the segue to this part, which is that he says that he's not, basically not opposed to them putting a fee-based subscription system in place for the user-created songs that are coming out of Guitar Hero.
Not only are we going to charge you nearly $200 to play the game properly, we're then going to encourage you to make content for free that we will then charge you for the privilege of doing.
John, as an investor, I mean, listen to this. It sounds great. The ability to offer these songs on a subscription basis may very well result in the newest subscription opportunity in our portfolio.
This is Bobby Kotick basically said, he was holding up a sign while he was saying this that actually said, if you could see it, we think all gamers are really fucking stupid and we're going to fuck them over and over and over and over and over.
You know what I would like? I would like to spend $200 for this game and then to write a song in it and then have to pay money to hear my own song that I just made.
Exactly.
You have to wonder how much of this was tied into the RIAA requiring them to have some kind of pricing structure in there, because inevitably people are going to be creating songs, without the rights to them and putting them out there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a spoiler. We're talking about the Beatles game here in a while, but it basically,
we can pull it up now if you want.
It basically came out this week that Apple Records, the people who own the Beatles, were like, ha ha ha, to the money that Activision offered them. It was like a joke. It was like
there was a quote from the Sony exec who controls they have the publishing rights to it, and they said that basically Activision were posturing like they were doing as a favor.
Right, and the deal that MTV made with them is like a pioneering deal that gives way more money to the holder, to the Beatles.
Yeah. Martin Bandier.
And it's going to change the licensing.
Not the Beatles.
Well, what we're seeing, I think what we're seeing emerge is this divide, whereas the sort of Rock Band, Guitar Hero, the full releases are essentially promotional vehicles for bands that want to get attention and bands it's a way, it's exposure.
Yeah, and like for AC/DC, it's a huge success.
No, I think what AC/DC is on the other side of that, and it's like the Aerosmith and the Beatles, where there's going to be this other model, which is where the band is the bigger draw than the game.
Right.
So you've got the game being the draw and introducing people to music, and then you've got if you want to play the Beatles, you got to pay extra because we paid extra. I mean, they haven't announced that the actual the sum that exchanged hands.
It's extreme.
Astronomical.
It implied that it's huge.
So let me put it in perspective for you. First of all, the Harmonix Beatles game will have 45 songs in it. And we know that's a cap. We don't know what the songs will be. But
we do know that Let It Be won't be one of them, though.
Oh, we heard that? That's fucking awful. Really?
Because it's only games that were... It was only songs that were published on... because the Beatles changed labels over the course.
Right. So I won't get Let It Be.
No, you won't get Let It Be.
Can I vote against every Ringo song and against Maxwell Silverhammer? I don't want any of those.
Bang, bang. Anyway, so...
John Lennon hated that song so much.
Oh, come on. You don't want to play Octopus's Garden?
Oh, maybe.
On the drums?
Yes. John Lennon hated Maxwell Silverhammer so much he refused to be in the studio when they recorded it.
Wow.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
The developers will be able to select 45 songs from the catalog recorded during their 62 to 69 tenure with EMI for inclusion in the game. So they only have the EMI songs. Martin Bandier, in an interview in Variety's Words, said that Sony ATV, he's the chairman CEO of Sony ATV Music Publishing, said that they asked for as much as possible and that we signed a deal that would be considered very rich by the video game company, but fair for the artist.
Imagine the conversation. So, how much do you want for
the
this?
artist.
How much have you got?
And even more troubling, it says it will have online implications that will be enormous.
Well, attached to this, as this was all going on, MTV also dropped a further $170 million to acquire the rest of Harmonix.
Yeah. Well, that money might have already been in the deal. It just came out.
It was probably an earn-out.
It was probably an earn-out, right? It was probably already in the deal.
But still,
It came
an
out in the
awful lot of money moving around Harmonix and Rock Band.
And
serious.
The plastic instrument arms race continues to intensify.
Yes.
Is there going to be a sitar instrument that you can have with the Beatles game?
That'd be fantastic.
The other side of the story, and I must give credit where credit is due because this segue is brought to you by the LA Times, who actually had a story along these lines. The other side of this story is that if you don't have one of those arms race winning titles, you're in deep trouble, as THQ might be, considering that they've, like Midway, announced... Well, not like Midway. They are in trouble like Midway, and they've announced, THQ has, that they're closing several of their internal studios. Gamasutra had the story, but basically Paradigm Entertainment, Mass Media, Locomotive Games, and Sandblast Games are all being shuttered.
And some of those are kind of tragic. Like Paradigm, they made Pilot Wing 64. They're an old-time developer. They're really good. Mass Media, on the other hand, deserve to die.
You got some of the titles you're talking about here, like Stuntman Ignition. These are the guys picked up from Atari. You've also got the guys who did Destroy All Humans, Big Willie Unleashed, and Destroy All Humans, Path of the Furon.
Which isn't even out yet.
Yeah, I mean, so Sandblast is like already gone. You've also got cutbacks to Juice Games, who did the Juiced series, which we'll talk about.
We can live without that.
When THQ bought them, like, really?
But there's also cutbacks coming at Rainbow Studios, and I have to say, Rainbow Studios, I mean, they did a lot of great work with Motocross Madness, and they're,
Baja, not so good.
Yeah, since Motocross Madness, and since they switched to doing the ADV, they have made the same game over and over and over.
I mean, I don't think anybody's that surprised. THQ's been kind of living on its Nickelodeon and wrestling licenses,
which they're spending a fortune on.
But Saints Row is, it's viable. They've shipped 2 million, so it's not like THQ's in bad shape. I think they'll recover from this.
Continuing on the failure tip, Hellgate London, there was a glimmer of hope.
This headline you have written here.
What?
Hellgate London Dunzors.
Yeah.
Really?
I was typing really fast. I was doing show prep. I was like, let's get the show prep done. The actual title for this is Hellgate London to close forever in the Europe and United States. So,
ICANN has Hellgate London? It's not.
Bitch. He's kind of like the human version of Asuka. We could put Lolcat on him.
My cat? Or the Evangelion character? Well, because I'll tell you, he's nothing like the Evangelion character.
There's also a character named Asuka in the new Castlevania Judgment fighting game for the Wii. Maria's Owl.
This is true.
All right, I'm not sure anyone who was excited in North America or Europe, but there was a glimmer of hope for the Hellgate London fans because...
Nobody. There are no fans, and they have no hope.
Next.
No one really cares.
Next, the related story.
This
is more interesting.
This horse has decomposed its dust.
And it's completely dead. Namco says it's not coming back. It's done. Period.
Glue.
But Bill Roper will live on with Cryptic Studios, where he will either be working on Champions Online or Star Trek Online, or maybe both.
Good luck.
Right.
Good luck. The official announcement said that Bill brings a ton of creative energy to the Cryptic office, and we're thrilled to have him join our team. And, of course, for his side, Roper said that Cryptic has experienced huge growth over the past year and has exciting opportunities ahead of it. The company knows how to choose compelling IPs that have rich history, such as
Congratulations to Bill. We wish him well.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to working with the team. You're cruel.
Only promise what you can deliver.
Speaking of promising what you can, delivering on what you promise, Steam continues to deliver on its promises, and they're bringing Steam Cloud to fruition with Left 4 Dead. Now, of course, they're not bringing in all of the functions. The functions that people probably really want
what's Steam Cloud? Is it cloud computing?
Yes, it is.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's where you save all your settings. All of your settings.
I wasn't paying attention.
Save games and everything will exist on the cloud, so you log in from anywhere, and it's you.
So we're getting half of that with Left 4 Dead. We're getting the settings at the outset.
It's the ultimate promise of Xbox Live, realized first by Steam.
Does it cost extra?
Nope.
No.
That's just part of the deal.
Part of your deal.
Status functionality.
So Steam Cloud promises to do, like you said, that you're going to be able to do save your settings, save your configuration, even like if you have a special layout on your keyboard that you like to use, it'll save all of that material. When you log in anywhere on any computer to go play Left 4 Dead, you'll be able to get that. Unfortunately, there's not a timetable yet for getting save games, which I would really like. Save games would be awesome.
But it's interesting they're doing that, particularly that, going back to the Bobby Kotick raping the gaming community at Activision. The figure that they
don't use that word anymore.
Sodomizing
brutally and involuntarily.
Prison style.
That'd be reverse style right there. World Tour.
World of Warcraft previous quarter revenue from subscriptions $271 million.
Oh my god!
Making World of Warcraft $1 billion a year game.
They have a higher GDP than 72 countries.
Can they possibly say now, and I know that this was going around when the Games for Windows initiative was launching and Microsoft was desperately, trying to posture that it was, World of Warcraft has killed PC gaming.
That's a very interesting point. It really has, to a great degree.
It's pretty much irrefutable now.
No,
I don't understand. I don't understand what that even means.
There's so many people playing World of Warcraft
that they can't play other games.
They're not playing. They don't have the time, and they don't have the money to do anything else.
I don't know. I think Sport, like 2 or 3 million copies, says.
Oh, I wish Andrew were here because you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a Venn diagram for you. Here is what used to be the PC gaming dollar. And here is World of Warcraft. Oh, it's bigger. It swallowed it. Well, it fucking swallowed the PC game.
There's still million-selling games
there are
every month.
Yeah, from PopCap.
But no, there's not.
Yeah,
here's
really
PopCap. There are from PopCap.
I would also argue this. You can't pirate World of Warcraft. There you go.
Oh, that's
another interesting point.
Can't pirate it,
but
no matter how savvy you
there
are.
are not million-selling games every month on PC.
No.
There are maybe
regularly.
No, there's not.
No.
There's been a couple this year, and the rest is all World of Warcraft. The casual games that you can play, but you'll twist for free. And if you drop the $20, I mean, fine. But you play it for free, and every 5 games they'll remind you that you can buy it for $20. Those things sell really well, but the majority of the 2 things that are fucking PC gaming is the developers are still shooting too high on tech specs, and most people are, every time WoW like lulls. The other thing they found is that 75% of the people that left World of Warcraft to go and play Conan have come back.
Yeah. And they came back pretty quickly. I mean, if you look at that time horizon, they came back very quickly.
Probably the same thing's going to happen with Warhammer too.
It's like the deal with the devil or whatever that they did. But I mean, like, to your little diagram, it's bigger. It's like
I don't have enough paper to show how big it is, right?
And it's because it runs fairly well on pretty much anything, and it's compelling. And they keep adding so much. I mean, I was listening to Matt and the guys talk about the zombie thing that they did before Halloween. It was fucking genius.
Yep.
Yeah.
Completely changing the game.
And what you're pointing to, and I don't know if you guys follow, but I remember because you're pointing to what we were talking about, back when Games for Windows magazines was still CGW. I mean, way back. This is like 2005 or so. It's already in the first year has World of Warcraft.
It's you're sucking so much like mojo out of the market and funneling it into a single product that it has continued to snowball along those paths. So that the people that were super engaged, the PC gaming market more than anything else was so driven by the core.
Right.
And the core are just doing one thing now. And that there's not enough of them doing other things. Right. I mean, even like Crisis, whatever the last Crisis, Warhead or whatever.
Right.
Disaster.
I mean, and you can see it in place like how much the Counter-Strike community has become now very much a competitive gaming world and a very niche thing. I mean, I'm sure there's still a number of continuous games of Counter-Strike being played, but they're so
it's an
dwarfed.
Exclusive community.
It is. It's an exclusive community, but
no kid's like, I'm going to start playing Counter-Strike today. That doesn't happen.
And the Blizzard guys continue to take steps. They're feeding both sides. The new expansion is very much targeted towards end game play to satisfy the high end players and keep those guys there. But at the same time, they've been streamlining the game through the patches. Making it very much more quick to level, adding the bonuses. Like if you bring in a friend, you suddenly get to power level you and your friend up into the 30s.
But I think the genius of Steam is that what Warcraft is hurting the most is retail sales of video games. Because people just aren't going out and buying stuff. But the genius of Steam is you can download stuff and it's cheaper. And it's like
they have sales. They had a sale this week.
If you want to go dabble in something, there's a lot of stuff for $20 or less on Steam. And it's genius. I mean, between the two things, I think that the retail box sales of PC games, it's just like, and you talk to a lot of people now, and they're just, any part of the business, you start saying, whether it's media about PC games or no one's interested. They don't care. They don't care about the audience. It's just like, it's done.
How do you think that's going to impact Sims 3? Because, I mean, a couple of years ago, if you had said Sims 3 is coming, it would have been monumental. And I don't know that it has quite the clout it had.
It still has women.
It still has women.
As long as it runs...
No,
women,
for real.
Women are the only people that play The Sims.
As long as it runs on any laptop that's currently on sale, like, I'm not talking XPSs, but like normal Dells, it'll be fine.
Okay.
But if they've jacked the specs up too high, so you can't play it on a laptop or you can't play it on a low-end, like, little micro PC that doesn't have a crazy graphics card in it, then it's fucked. Because that's what people do now. They buy a laptop and they lug it around, and for a lot of women particularly, The Sims might be the one game they have. That and Bejeweled and Text Twist and a couple of other things are going to be the games they have on their machine.
How about this? What's the impact then of this World of Warcraft drawdown on PC gaming to StarCraft 2?
It's water. I mean, like, it's so big in Asia, and it's
so the Korean side, the Korean part of that game will take care of itself.
Is still Blizzard. And Blizzard can do no wrong in America.
So Blizzard and Steam are the face of PC gaming.
Yeah. Have you not noticed for the last 5 years?
Well, no, I'm noticing.
But I think it's more like, there was a lot of speculation about it, and there were people that were raising it a couple of years ago, and it's like, is it actually hurting more than it's helping? And it's people are playing a game on PC, so therefore it's healthy. And it's like,
would you agree that
was sort of a desperate comment?
But John, wouldn't you agree that basically the Games for Windows initiative has been a complete failure? And,
absolutely.
And Xbox 360 has most to do with that, because the really good games they're making aren't available for Windows. They're available on Xbox 360.
Well, the very, very clear point of that is, what is the best Microsoft Game Studio PC game in the last 12 months?
Well, they canceled most of them, didn't they?
It's like, what is it? There's not even one.
Flight Simulator.
That's
you think you're probably right.
I'm right.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I'm always right.
There's not been an Age of Empires, has there?
Well, there sure as shit won't be one now, will there?
Well, it depends what happens wherever.
Well, but
do we have the news story about Halo Wars?
Oh, with the Halo 3 maps?
They're going to be packing
Halo Wars Ice.
Yeah, they're going to be.
I didn't include it. I mean, you can hit it.
It's just kind of interesting.
Isn't it the only place that you're going to be able to get them for the time?
You're going to get them there.
Pack.
You're going to get them there first.
So if you're going to do the news, you have to tell the news story first, and then we can talk about it.
All right. Well, they finally announced the final specs for Halo Wars, the limited edition collector's edition, and as part of that, you will be able to install 3 new maps for Halo 3 multiplayer. And they're part of this mythic map pack, which they already have achievements listed for on Xbox.com.
Oh, wait. It's Halo 3 maps for Halo 3.
Halo 3 maps for Halo 3.
I didn't read this. I thought you were getting, like, maps from Halo 3 reinterpreted as Halo Wars levels.
Fully the cynical, like, Konami make you buy a different game in order to get the Metal Gear demo.
This is the Final Fantasy demo in Tobal number 1.
Yeah.
It's more of a Crackdown would be probably a better comparison, where you had the Halo 3 beta.
Yeah.
Well, but, people...
I think you're equating it to Final Fantasy 7 demo in Tobal was pretty damn spot on.
There is a chance that this might make people who've never played an RTS learn to like an RTS. So
yeah, and Halo Wars does look.
Or they might do like they did with Tobal and pop out the Final Fantasy 7 disc, play that, and then take the damn thing back to GameStop.
Or they're paying $80 to play 3 maps a little sooner.
I think Halo Wars looks way better than Tobal.
Tobal wasn't bad for its day.
Right, but I'm saying Halo Wars actually looks, by all accounts, to be fairly competent. What I saw at E3
I'm not arguing that. It is fairly competent. I'm just saying
if it's so competent, why wasn't it
February 2009?
Yeah.
I'm just saying if you're looking at the stature of the titles. I mean,
sure.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's a smart move on their part.
Yeah,
why not?
Right.
Do you guys want to talk about the presidential polls that were on Xbox Live and how they relate to what actually happened? You guys interested in that?
It was a little more extremely Obama, right?
It was a little more extremely Obama, but if you actually look at the demographics of the exit polls for CNN and where they looked at the voters 18 to 29, it's much more close to what actually transpired on the Xbox Live polls. So the Xbox Live polls
That makes sense. It's who's playing.
They tied in pretty well.
My favorite poll I heard election night was among voters who have only a cell phone and no landline.
Oh, yeah,
they were overwhelmingly like 70% for Obama. And I think those are the same people who have Xbox Live.
Okay.
I really do.
That's a really interesting stat.
Don't you think?
You know what's fun? If you're in college right now, sign up for a statistics class, and hopefully you get a cynical professor, because if you do, they'll teach you that basically you can make statistics.
You can prove anything.
You can fucking prove anything.
I used to make a living by survey research.
73% of all statistics are bullshit.
It's awesome. So just to have a little more fun with that, I got another statistics one for you. IGN did a little poll on their site. It's called
No, they didn't. They did a huge multiple $100,000 research paper of which this was a small part.
Okay.
A little poll.
I don't know these things. I mean, you're like the big executive, so you're on these. Are You Game study, which was done by was it done by Kronos or somebody?
It was some huge study group. It was like a big. Right? They had like 3,000 places that they went to. It was a big, but it was
the part that I lifted out of this that was interesting was the survey of retailers, because the retailer that completely blew everybody away was Walmart.
Are you surprised by that?
Yeah, I mean, one in
Why
5
are you surprised by that?
Because I kind of associate IGN,
but it's not a gamer study. It's a household
and
study.
Garnet, you live.
It was.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then never mind.
And also, we live in California, which has
no
rules against Walmart. Like, go to America, like where I'm from, and every little town has just a Walmart.
Well,
that's where you buy your shit.
Dude, I lived in America for a long time.
You lived in real America. Here in fake America, it's very different. In real America, they like Walmart.
I lived in real America where they have Walmart
Target.
for a long time.
That's close.
Target, it's fucking French.
Target did pretty well. Target was just below Best Buy and GameStop.
If you want the real version of Shaun White snowboarding, only at Target.
Yeah,
really. What surprised me also out of this was that Circuit City and Amazon.
Circuit City
did poorly. That
Circuit
doesn't
City
surprise
about
me.
to file for bankruptcy.
Yeah, but it surprised me that Amazon was down there with them. I mean, of the respondents, only 28% listed Amazon or Circuit City as places that they shopped at. Wait,
Do we know the percentage of these people that even use the internet on a regular basis?
they took the survey on IGN.
Was it an online survey only?
So you
then I really question it.
John, you know more about the survey than I do. So
it was a big, fucking huge thing.
So it wasn't just. I mean, it was through IGN though, right?
Well, no, it was an IGN study, but the real
it was IGN commissioned it.
Yeah, the real purpose of the survey was
understand purchasing habits.
Well, but I mean, the real purpose of it was what accompanied the launch of Green Pixels, which was IGN building up to proving why they needed to be launching a site that's something other than aimed at 18 to 30-year-old dudes.
So this wasn't just a survey of IGN users.
It was a household study about gaming behaviors, including purchasing behavior, playing behavior, spending power, and one of the things that came out of it was that at least 25% of games are bought and played by people that you wouldn't classify as hardcore. And when you look at the billions of dollars spent, that 25% chunk is pretty substantial.
Right.
And things like IGN and 1UP and GameSpot don't speak to that group at all.
No.
So it was justification. It was like, we're launching this other thing to try and talk to the other people.
Cool. Good perspective, thank you, because that brings us into much tighter focus and explains. I mean, that immediately explains why Walmart did so well, because Americans shop at Walmart.
This news story ceases to interest me.
Yeah, so there you go. But still, so where do you guys shop? I'm huge on Amazon. I mean, I like Amazon because I'm kind of lazy and I work a lot.
I'm a big fan of
They bring it to my office. Jim Speed drops it on my desk and it's there.
I shop at Amazon and Best Buy.
Yeah, Amazon.
I like
because I'm lazy.
Yeah.
And I have Prime because I buy enough stuff on Amazon. I have one click turned on, and I have Prime, so I don't pay shipping. And someone will mention a book, and if I happen to be near my computer, and I'm like, oh, and I look at it, and usually most books these days are marked down like $5 or whatever. And you're like, what the hell? Click.
Yep. And you know what really got me linked in even more to buying more shit on Amazon is their MP3 store.
DRM free,
cheaper than iTunes.
Dude, I buy it.
MP3 store.
I'm like, that place is dangerous for me. So moving right along, we only got a couple stories left. Metacritic surrendered their.
I told you about this last week because
you do take it away.
It started with a war between the Xbots and the triple fans to see who could bring down the the user review Metacritic score of the Big Fall release between Little Big Planet and Gears 2, and it started to spread in other titles. But I think right now still the user review of Gears 2 is 3.2 or 3.4, and Little Big Planet's 4 point something.
Metacritic games editor Mark Doyle chimed in on the Gears of War 2 page. He says, my advice for our faithful users is to focus your attention on the Metascore for this game and not the thousands of user votes, most of which have been submitted before said users have actually played the game. This is a gaming community, and if people want to stuff the ballot box, there's not much I can do at this point. When we upgrade the registration requirements for participation on the site in the near future, this type of thing won't happen. We'll post the full legitimate user reviews upon the game's release. Thanks for using the site. So we talked to Doyle, actually, and he said to us, Phil went and got a hold of him. He said that this hasn't been a systemic problem, that it's only cropped up on recently. Resistance 2 had it come up where Resistance 2 has a Metascore of 89, which is awesome, but it's only got a user score of 5.3 out of 10. LBP has a Metascore of 95 and only a user score of 6.1 out of 10. We talked about the Gears of War thing where it has a 94 and it's got like a 3.4 out of 10.
Thousands of 0 and 1 reviews.
It's thousands of them. Same thing happened on Amazon.
I have two questions. Why is the scale different between user reviews and the Metacritic? Like, why is it out of 100 and then
I could ask a lot of questions about the Metacritic scale.
Number two, why are user reviews even turned on until the game's been released?
Because he actually explained that. He said the founders were very interested in having people sign up for the site, and that's something they're going to change. He says we're going to disallow voting on games before release, and he also went on to say that our primary product is critic score. That's what we can control, and that's what we can certify. He added that they're going to have new ways to highlight user reviews that are accurate in the future.
I mean, I think this is dangerous, though. Like, say you're a mom, and you're looking at your son's Christmas list, and he asks for whatever game, and you're like, oh, I wonder if this game is good. You go on there, and he's like, well, it has all these good reviews, but, oh, look at all these user reviews. They say this is the worst game ever made.
It's not drastically different than the Amazon Spore issue.
Because a lot of people do look at, things like Amazon, like, a lot of people have a lot of trust in the what the crowd thinks.
Yep.
Because CNET had this problem with its digital cameras for a long time, where stuff that was reviewing really well from editorial, when it was in the real world, people were saying, yeah, it might be a really good camera, but I took it on vacation and this and this happened. So it's,
so it's shit.
It's shit because, like, this jammed or this got steamed up or
it turned on in my pocket and the lens broke. It's shit.
Right, but there's a lot of real world stuff that, like, with a really practical thing, you don't anticipate. So people do trust this stuff.
Yeah.
But you were saying earlier on that there was a lot of interesting stuff on multiplayer this week. He went back and he looked at because of this, looked at a bunch of stuff on what the professional reviews were versus the user reviews, and he used 1UP and Metacritic and Amazon and a couple of other things, because most people, if you ask them, well, who do you think is kinder to a game, the press or users? I mean, what would you think it would be? Who would you think would normally score?
Right, but anytime you have
score better,
users,
and that's always the argument used by publishers. Well, the users all think that it's great, and so you guys are bullshit for giving it a C.
I would actually disagree with that. I think if I go out of my way to, like, put a review online, I have a particular axe to grind.
Yeah, but we're talking. I think, John, you're right about popular perception.
Yeah, popular perception is that users are more forgiving, and a lot of that is because they just went out and bought it, and they feel that they need to justify their purchase.
Precisely.
Right. I mean, I hear what you're saying, Dave.
Yeah.
What you're saying is, like, thinking about it, but popular perception isn't thinking about it. It's like, just what's the reaction?
But where it nets out, if you look at multiple aggregates of user reviews and you net them all together, it actually levels out to about the same. And the user reviews in aggregate are about the same as the professional reviews. So, the myth is sort of, it was a little microcosm of the whole thing, but, he looked at games that were scoring very well from the press and the games that were scoring very badly to see if there was a real swing. But when you pile everything in together, I wonder what everybody likes the good stuff and everybody hates the bad stuff. What do you know?
I have to go home and see what the user review for Wii Music is.
Well, the Metascore is like a 5 or something.
It runs the gamut from 2s to 9s.
And speaking on this subject, because we caught a lot of flack for it, is something that I tried out this week in the news section. Is we did a review roundup, and I didn't want to call it a review roundup because I don't know, it just sounded really generic. Anyway, one of the things I want to bring into the news feed that we have, which I'm the executive editor of news, is a aggregate of not an aggregate, but like a going out and listening to what reviewers are saying about the games that are the big games. I started it with Resistance 2. Phil's doing it for Gears. We'll do it for some other games. But one of the things that I wanted to bring to it, which I hope people liked out of it, was not just giving you just an excerpt from the review, but like we're going out and we're reading the reviews and trying to figure out what the author is saying about the game and giving you like an overview of it. So apologize in advance. Not in advance. Apologize for not having given you an update that this is a thing that we're trying. But I thought people would get that was what we were trying to do.
I don't think anyone's upset about it. Got it.
Oh, really? You should read the comments on the news story.
Why don't you read these last two news stories while we're at it?
Banjo-Kazooie has fallen into the same trap that Dead Rising fell into, which is that they did all of their interface for high-def television, and on a standard def, you can't read the text.
That's a really good idea for a game aimed at kids.
Yeah.
At a price point that's $39.99.
Mommy, I think I need glasses.
Yeah, so
can't read anything.
Unfortunately,
I had to talk Ryan Scott off a cliff because he was so upset about this because he has SDTV and he refused to play the game almost. We had like dude, you got to play it even though
you can't read it. It's really bad. It might even be worse than Dead Rising. And unfortunately, the Rare's community manager has already stated on the forums that it's probably too expensive in terms of time, resources, and money to alter, and that I don't really know at this stage regarding whether it can be patched. But I wouldn't get your hopes up. Which is a shame. And on a quick counterpoint, Tina has been playing a lot of Gears of War 2 at her desk, and she has a standard def television. I'm surprised at how good Gears looks in standard def.
Gears 1 looked great in standard def as well.
It's really, how does the game look good?
Because that came out before I bought a little high def TV in the bedroom, and it's the way the Unreal Engine works in standard def is everything looks a lot smoother.
Right, and I think it's also the quality of the texture work.
Yeah.
In that game specifically.
Yeah, all that sort of whatever they call it, the bump mapping.
Yeah, normal mapping.
I think
the normal mapping looks really good.
I think it's judicious use of the special effects as well.
There's a lot of smoke and a lot of environment effect, and the lighting's awesome. And the impressive stuff in Gears of War is it's not just the detail; it's the
atmosphere.
It's the atmosphere around the detail, and in standard def it looks great.
And if you like that atmosphere, you should be able to watch the movie relatively soon. Evidently, the final script has been submitted, and the writer Chris Morgan says no doubt it's going to be a big movie. So Morgan wants it to play through as if it happened today. That's something where you could look outside your city and imagine the locust rising right up in the street, right there. Says it's not a prequel, but it's going to be considered potentially a prequel from some of the elements in it.
The story is Emergence Day, right? Isn't that what they said?
I don't have the data here for that. I'm sorry.
There was a story that the movie was going to be basically the Emergence Day story.
Well,
so it is sort of a prequel.
Wasn't there a story last week about Legendary Pictures potentially buying Epic Games? They're the people producing the movie.
I think that was like a blown out because the dude that left Brash went to Legendary, and I think it was people putting 2 and 2 together and making 12.
I am not hopeful in the least for this movie.
Summer blockbuster.
Yeah.
Going to be awesome.
Well, for a start, it's live action, and it's going to be real dudes wearing some interpretation of that armor, and it's going to look lame.
Do you think we can get 20 minutes of the third-person cam?
Cliff did say he has one rule: no wrestlers. No wrestlers in the movie.
That's not a bad rule, actually.
No, I'm still not hopeful at all, but that's not the worst thing.
They may have to make slightly less.
How about UFC guys?
Yeah.
He didn't say there was no MMA.
They may have to make the characters slightly less thick.
Randy Couture stars as Marcus Phoenix.
All right.
He was in the Scorpion King sequel, direct to DVD.
Fin de semana confirmed. And if you want me to say the rest of it in Spanish, you have to tell me how to say confirmed in Spanish, because I have no clue how to say confirmed in Spanish.
I don't remember that.
All right. There you go. Next week, Shane is off in Europe having gallivanting around the countryside.
Yeah, you'll hopefully see my exploits on the website.
Having fun, which will be awesome. Dave, you'll be here. John, will you be here next week?
I'll be
awesome.
Here.
We'll have to figure out who we bring in next week. We'll bring in a special guest star. Until then, you know where to catch up with us. That's boards.oneup.com for Shane and Dave and John. Good to have you back from the UK. This is Garnet saying thank you very much for listening. Until next week, we're a ghost.